We should remember it's April 11th, 1966. I was out of America. Charlie ran to the ambush. Heavy casualties, Trevino requesting a vehicle to get rid of that. The Army helicopters were removed because it was too dangerous. But an Air Force air rescue group had heard the call and volunteered to go in. Nobody woke up that morning knowing that history looked back at this as one of the greatest days of the Vietnam War. For Pitts, it was his day off. Naturally, he volunteered to come back. He was dropped down into the firefight as the X-Force Huskies over. The helicopter would receive heavy fire. Charlie Company was receiving heavy fire. So they laid immediate fire and lowered the line damage. Pitts was there to retrieve casualties, carefully review, and get the Republican helicopter back to base as quickly and as safely as possible. He put the better part of a dozen women over the Huskies and were made off his right away. The helicopter was heavy with a review day. To this day, the pilot doesn't know if he'll ever get back to Pitts anymore. Why did William Pitts stay alive? Our lives are made up of moments and choices. Pitts was a PJ who completed over 300 rescue missions in Vietnam. He had nothing to prove. He knew exactly what he was looking at. This was a slaughter. And in that moment, he chose to stay. He snuck outside the room to get back down there again. He covered up 1 meter circle with 2 dead bodies and told him to stay out. That son to watch Pitts take his first wounding. It's hard to say how many members of Troy Company opened their eyes that night to move Mitch Pitts alone. He was shot 3 times and never stopped. He cared for the wounded, shot back at the muzzle flashes when he could, and looked into the eyes and made them knew they were dying. And just wanted him to hold their gaze, so they wouldn't forget him. The next morning, April 12th, 1966, when the battle was over, most of Troy Company looked in the eye. During the fight, the Vietcong either took a woman or killed a man. Pitts had many casualties. There was a bullet hole in the forehead and a gas mask chamber. The air rescue line was an angel on hands around the world. William H. Pitts' body was not mentioned. There was a ladies' man. There was a clown. He was a woman who reckless and foolhardy in his youth. He was a stock boy from a small town who told his parents on New Year's Eve that he was jumping a tree that night to report for duty in the Air Force. He was Pitts. He was an owner, and he was a warrior with the man alive. We don't bring the man alive. This is not a contest. We don't ask people to die for the country. In fact, that's the last thing Pitts would want. Simply ask yourself, why did he stay? This was not a man who died the right way. This was a man who lived the right way. By letting the core values. We lead the way by showing the way. Remember William H. Pitts alone. Remember these things he did, like others may not. Aim high.
If I could get everybody's attention for a few minutes, I have an announcement to make. So I'm Chief Master Sergeant Larry Conger. I'm the Contracting Career Field Manager, and it's been my pleasure to end my 30-year career as the Contracting Career Field Manager. And I have worked with an outstanding group of Chief Master Sergeants throughout my career. And all of them are here this week, and I'm so proud of that. But I especially want to recognize one today that sewed on Chief Master Sergeant. Chief Swistak, can you please rise? Today, Chief Swistak, or Swiss as we call him, he's the newest contracting Chief Master Sergeant, and we're so proud that he's here today with us, and awesome job, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, everybody, so now that you have your food, you know, isn't this great? We get to recognize people, we see people that we meet. We met up with so many people I haven't seen in a while. A little bit of that about myself. I was at Lake Patch for a while, and then I deployed, and now I'm out in Hawaii, and people are like, hey, Michael, we're so glad to see you. You're still as funny as ever. There it is, I'm a little bit dry humor, so just bear with me. But they're like, hey, what about that Ed Ruckler? I thought he was a funny guy. And I'm here to prove to you guys that he is a funny guy. So I'm going to read his intro right now, so let's allow it to happen. All right, now that we have some food for our stomachs, let us turn our attention to our next presenters who are going to give us some brain food. Oh, they didn't like it. But seriously, our next presenters are 3 PhDs who are here to give a quick download on how organizational and individual learning works and how we can turn that learning into action. So please welcome to the stage Lieutenant Colonel Landale, Major Finkenstadt, and Major Muir to the stage.
Okay, so, son?
Can you hear me? Right.
You must have yeah. We're not doing this. Two PhDs. Okay, so like General Trevino, we were also not given a topic. They said, called and said, hey, we want to do a PhD panel at the Worldwide. You, Bill, and Fink are on it. We said, okay. So I know personally, and I won't speak for Bill and Fink, but the first thing I did is have a moment of panic as a hardcore introvert. So we got together and said, okay, what are we going to talk about that anybody is going to be interested in? What do 3 nerds bring to the table that anybody will care about? And after several failed attempts at topics, we landed on learning, something we know something about. So we're going to talk today about organizational learning, individual learning, and how we can put that learning into action. And then we said, okay, we thought initially it was going to be a breakout session, so we said, who's going to want to come to this breakout session if we don't offer something? So, ladies and gentlemen, learning and kink. Heavy on the learning, light on the kink. Okay, so now we're actually feeling a little bit like baby geniuses because given Dr. Roper's discussion up here earlier, all I kept doing is thinking, this is my entire presentation. Well, not the entire thing, but pieces of it were pieces of my presentation. So felt pretty good about that. At the same time, felt to myself, I probably need to bring something else to the table here because I don't want to just repeat what he said. So I tried to tie in a little bit of what he said with some new information. So just going back to his speech a little bit, some big words that I wrote down: culture, empowerment, goal alignment, speed, and protecting risk takers. So we'll talk a little bit about that today in this discussion. Okay. If I could change this slide, I would capitalize, bold, underline the word need. So why do we need a learning organization? And we do need it, okay? And I would say it's all about change, baby. It's all about change. We are living in a world of change. Several of our speakers have already talked about how important change is. And this is a culture change that we're trying to institute within Air Force contracting. So as we know, the speed of change is not changing. It will continue to evolve and probably get faster in our lifetime. And we are really going to have to keep up. We also have to lead the change. So everybody in this room, as well as several people back home, we need to be the people leading that change to make sure that it happens. And I can tell you from my own limited experience as a first-time commander, the leading change is extremely difficult. There is a whole field of work, academic work, on how you properly lead change. And it's separate from just regular leadership because it's completely different from regular leadership. It has some of the same pieces and parts, but there's a lot more that you have to do to actually lead change and make sure that you get to the end, your objective, successfully. So if everybody could just do me a favor and humor me, if you could pull up Safari or whatever internet browser your app, your phone uses, and just put in the word inertia. I-N-E-R-T-I-A. I'm helping you out, Mr. Westmeyer. Okay, if Google's doing its proper thing with its algorithm, we should all be getting the same results. And I'll read the first part. A tendency to do nothing or to remain unchanged. Is everybody seeing the same thing? Yeah? Okay, somebody yell out the second part. The bureaucratic inertia of government. So it's funny to me that we are the example of the word inertia. And what I would say to that is that we need to change that so that it's a ... except the Air Force. So tying in some thoughts today from the presentations that have already gone on, I'm going to kind of give a preview for those who have not read it, which I'm sure most people have, of the flight plan. So as you're probably aware, there's 4 lines of effort in the flight plan. First one, up on the wall here, mission-focused business leadership. So what we're trying to get at here is a departure from just rote execution, right? I mean, I think we've all experienced this in our career field. Give me a PR, I do it, it's done. We're trying to get away from that because we actually want, as General Holt mentioned earlier, people to be students of the requirements owner mission or students of the larger Air Force missions. I'm right now in command of a squadron that supports the medical community. This is how much I knew about medical before I went to that squadron. Nothing. And I frantically started to try to understand both the Air Force medical community and the industry of medical, which I'll tell you flat out, Air Force medical is way easier to understand than the industry of medical. And it's not just because it's bigger, it's because it's completely screwed up. But I'll tell you, I have learned so much about how the Air Force and really the larger DoD delivers medicine to us. And it's really, it was surprising in a good way how well they're doing it. It was surprising in a good way the kind of data and metrics they were keeping on it, especially for a nerd like me who wanted to look at all that. And they were collecting it. They weren't analyzing it, they were collecting it. So it's really impressive when you start to get to learn what the mission partner is doing, and then you can really feel their pain. So I'm taking a page from my friend Steve Brady back here. He's always asking to feel of the pain. Hey, tell me what your pain points are. And once I started to really get into that medical, we started going to their conferences, their logistics conference, their big events like this that they hold every year, and you start to understand what is really important to them and what they're really struggling with. And in so many cases, I wish Major Tom Kellerman was here because he would back me up on this. So many cases in their particular medical logistics symposium they do every year, we were like, that's such an easy fix. Somebody should have just told us. And so we then would, after the presentation, we'd be like, hey, let's talk. And until you get involved with them at that level, they don't understand that they actually do need, that you can make those changes for them as their business leaders. So that's been a really good learning lesson for me, and I've actually seen it in action. I encourage you all to, if you haven't, be students of the mission. And then, second line of effort, I hope I'm not getting these in the wrong order, apologize if I am, sir. Tools, not rules. So what that means to me is distributed power. Distributed power. So we talk about empowerment, that's what that is, distributed power. So we need to distribute power in order to enact faster change. We need it, and what we really need people to do now is to think critically. So hence, tying back to this learning piece, now it's up to the person to think critically. No longer someone telling you what to do, just rote execution. Instead, you thinking to yourself, how would I do this? How would I do this maybe differently if it's not being done as well as I think it should be done, right? So as we push down that power, we need people to come up on their learning levels. And I think another thing we'll get out of this, to be honest, is voluntary followership. Because when you empower people, they want to do it, right? Instead of forcing them to do it. So that's a good thing in general for our career field. And we'll also get, from the National Defense Strategy, solutions at the speed of relevance. We'll start to see that faster as people learn more and feel more empowered and up their critical thinking skills, and they'll feel, frankly, just smarter and able to do that job more effectively. And then we'll get the solutions faster. Own the high ground, the third line of effort, is really about smarter and faster processes and all the buzzwords, right? Or old buzzwords is what I'd call them. Efficiency, effectiveness, experimentation. But as Dr. Rover said up here, it's not just the words, it's actually doing the actions. He talked about speed chess, doing it faster, and that's how you win. Not necessarily perfect, but faster. I love that example. To me, there's another one that comes to my mind, which is really the disruptive type of learning, which is you just flip the table in general and say, we're not playing chess anymore. This is a new game, right? So I think I would encourage us all to think that way. Sometimes it is chess, sometimes it's not chess. Know where you're at. And then, of course, General Trevino spoke of the expeditionary operations. A lot of people stood up and said, you know, hey, I've been part of this, been part of exercises and actual deployments for a long time. I know a lot of us in the room have, and you can attest to the fact that that's learning every day. That's a new kind of learning every single day. There is nothing repetitive about expeditionary, right? So, some key things that we can do. One, I would say keep up. Keep up, keep up. How many people have ever taught your parents to use an iPhone? Oh yeah. Oh man. Oh boy, I still struggle. And you know, they always say, oh, if you, my parents, especially my mother, she's here today, you can tell her I said this. She says, well, it's because you guys were born with this stuff, right? You know it because you were born with it. And I always say to her, you don't know it because you didn't keep up. And that's true. I mean, there's a certain amount of I say that to my mother, yes I do. But there's a certain amount of, hey, this stuff was out there, you were an adult when it happened, you could have taken it on and learned it, right? And I think that's incumbent on all of us. And I would say especially those of us who were in the first part of General Trevino's speech standing up as older dogs, if you will, more experienced, it's on us to keep learning and keep up, because if we don't, then we are going to not only not understand what the people below us know, but what do you think that causes from them? How do you think they think about us if we don't actually know, right? So for all of us, really keeping up. And two, focus on results. Get used to talent and not time. Get used to thinking about people in the terms of their talent and not the amount of time they've been in this career field, right? I wish he was still here. Dr. Roper, he graduated from, oh gosh, was it Georgia Institute of Technology in 2001. He's like 39 or 40, right? So that's talent, not time. And then finally, learning orgs are fun places to work. And they just are. So the more that we can bring in and become a learning organization, the more people will have fun at work. Okay, I'm running over my time. I'm going to go through one more slide real quickly. And kind of, there it is. Okay, so this is from Peter Senge. It's not my own work, but he's the director of MIT's Center for Organizational Learning. And here's basically the steps. Personal mastery. So we go from me to we, right? So me, I learn personally and I master. And then I turn around and I help the person behind me master, right? After I've gotten it. So that's personal mastery, and that's sort of the lowest level. Second is the mental model, which is really reflecting on, clarifying, and continually updating our view of the world. So again, not remaining stagnant, continuing to learn, continuing to understand. 3 is the shared vision. So the National Defense Strategy, the flight plan. These are ways that our leadership is giving us their vision and sharing it with us so that we can carry it out to other people as leaders, right? And I would, I guess, challenge everybody. What I think is really important is that goes down to the very lowest level. There's no new airman that is too young or too inexperienced to understand what those documents mean. So we need to tell them what they mean. If they can't fully understand them, we can kind of, help them along and make sure that they understand what they're supposed to be doing and how they contribute to those documents. This fourth one is my favorite. It's team learning, and it's where we become greater than the sum of our parts. So anybody ever been on a sports team that just is like knocking it out of the park? You can't stop, right? Or maybe part of like a performing arts of some sort, a band or an orchestra that you're just like, man, it is a wonderful thing. You know the feeling. It's hard to describe it. You know the feeling when they're just clicking, just doing it, right? And it's everybody knows each other and everybody's strengths well enough that the team is just moving along at such a nice clip. To me, if we got there as Air Force contracting, that's magic. We can do that. The final one is systems thinking. So this is where we look at how the forces and relationships among the different organizations play and how it all fits together so that then we can better influence the whole system, right? So it's a great pinnacle success if we get there, but I think even if we got to that team learning where we're playing like the best, I'll just use basketball since it's March Madness. Where we're playing like the best team out there and we're doing no-look passes and everything to each other. Texas Tech, yes. Yes. Good game last night. Anyway, so if we can get to that team learning part, and that's really the organizational learning, that's the magic. So I'm going to turn it over now to Bill, who's going to talk to you about some individual learning.
Hi. So I guess one thing about academics is we like to use the lectern. And it is a lectern, it's not taught you that? Who taught you that?
Someone told me that recently. And go green. Anyone?
Okay.
Wow.
Cool. Where's the? Yeah, so I'm going to talk about individual learning, specifically how individual learning works, so you can apply this hopefully to yourself, to those that work for you, to your organization, to those around you, maybe to your child or spouse, or however you want to apply it. So first off, let me define this. So what is learning? And this isn't my definition. This is from Susan Ambrose. She's a professor at Carnegie Mellon. But I'll list a couple things of what learning is, and then one thing of what learning is not. So learning is a process. Learning is not a product in and of itself. And so this process takes place in our mind. And so we can really only infer after learning has occurred that it indeed has occurred because there's some artifact of learning. And that artifact may be a test score, that artifact may be better performance, that artifact may be a product in itself. Second, learning involves change, and that's change in our knowledge, beliefs, behaviors, or attitudes. And that change unfolds over a period of time. So the change shouldn't be transient, it should not be fleeting, it should be something that lasts, and it changes how we act and how we think. And then learning is not something that's done to you, it's something that we do to ourselves. So individually, learning is something that we accomplish with the help of others, but on our own. And so lastly, what is learning not? Learning is not studying, and so I want to differentiate between the two. Studying, of course, can lead to learning, but there's a difference between studying and learning. Studying is typically focusing on the whats, but learning is focusing on the hows, the whys, and the what-ifs. So here, see there's a camel. The camel has two humps. Has anyone heard this before? Why does a camel have two humps? So I'll explain. So the question is, why do some of us struggle more than others to learn? Can we agree that we all don't learn at the same rate? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you an abstract. And it's from a paper, and the paper is called The Camel Has Two Humps. And it was actually, the paper was retracted. So this is going to be kind of fun. There's probably about 8 or 9 sentences, so I'll read fairly quickly. But this is a paper, and the context in the field is in computer science. It's about programming. But just listen through this, and then we'll talk about the conclusion. This is the abstract. Learning to program is notoriously difficult. A substantial minority of students fail in every introductory programming course in every UK university. This is written in the UK. Despite heroic academic effort, the proportion has increased rather than decreased over the years. Despite a great deal of research into teaching methods and student responses, we have no idea of the cause. It has long been suspected that some people have a natural aptitude for programming, but until now, there's been no psychological test which could detect it. Programming ability is not known to be correlated with age, with sex, or with educational attainment, nor has it been found to be correlated with any of the aptitudes measured in conventional intelligence or problem-solving ability tests. So here we go. We have found a test for programming aptitude, of which we give details. We can predict success or failure even before the students have had any contact with any programming language with very high accuracy, and by testing with the same instrument after a few weeks of exposure with extreme accuracy. We present experimental evidence to support our claim, and here we go, hold on to your hat. We point out that programming teaching is useless for those who are bound to fail and pointless for those who are certain to succeed, and that's wrong. And so that's why this was retracted. But the interesting part of the argument that's made here is that there's some innate ability that we have in learning. And we know that some people have high IQs and others don't. And what we see, and this isn't wrong, the camel has two humps. And so when they say the camel has two humps, they're talking about the distribution of test scores, for instance, or the distribution of academic potential as you measure it in some way. And you probably recall from being in school, maybe your teacher told you that these scores are they're Gaussian, right? They're on a bell curve or a normal distribution. And what this is saying is there's multiple distributions. There's maybe 2, there's 3, there's 4. And trying to understand why that is. Why are some on this distribution to the right? Why are some on this distribution to the left? The conclusions that these authors make, which is incorrect, is that exists because it's something innate. That nurture has trumped, that nature has trumped nurture. And actually the opposite is true. And so it's interesting to try and figure out why. There was data from a 2013 study by the Higher Education Research Institute, which suggests that students who fared the best in high school, those who earned A's with the least amount of effort, often struggle more than others when starting college. So those who previously had it easy didn't have to learn study skills and learning skills, but they got to a place where they needed it the most. They didn't have it, so they had to learn it. And so I'll tell you, I had a friend in town last week. He came to, I'm in Monterey, I'm at Naval Postgraduate School. He came to San Francisco. IEEE has it's an organization, engineering organization, and he's a neuroscientist. But we were college roommates. And so I asked him, and it wasn't related to this, but I asked him in general, I said, and I have to speed up, I have 10 minutes left. I asked him, I said, Jonathan, when did you get to that point? Because he went through a PhD program too, and he went to an Ivy League school. I said, when did you get to that point where you had to learn how to learn? And he said he did it in his undergrad. His undergrad was in math. And I said, I didn't actually get to that point until I was in my PhD program. And I went through MPS, and I think I got part of the way there. I went there as a student. I'm there now in faculty. But it wasn't until I was in my PhD program that I said, holy smokes, I've really got to figure out my study skills and my learning skills. And so my point here is that the distributions are probably not a function of some, something that's nature necessarily, right? It's how we've been raised and our own skills, and these are things that we can improve, we can hone. So on to the next chart. Who's seen this? Surely folks have seen this, I hope. Who's? Okay. I'd like you to think, it's hard to see, I guess, the way this is panned out, but I'd like you to think about learning this way, in that learning is not some amorphous blob of nothingness and things happening in different areas. It's actually quite structured, and there's a hierarchy. You can see this is called Bloom's taxonomy. This is very famous. You can look it up on your phone, pull it up. It'll help you structure learning for yourself. It'll help you structure learning for others around you. And if you're in a position where you're assigning training or education, you should look at this. You really should. You should go and look at this and say, what level of education do I need? Start at the bottom, remembering. Next is understanding. Next is applying. Next is evaluating, is analyzing, and then evaluating, and then correcting, and then creating. And you can't get to applying without remembering. You can't get to understanding without remembering. You can't get to creating if you can't analyze, apply, and evaluate. And that's the point. But not everyone needs to be creative for every task, right? So you can look at what you need to do, what others around you need to do. Where do they need to be at? You can also look at, in terms of the lines of effort that we have, where should we be? And my argument to you is that in a business advisory role, we were probably somewhere around the middle of this. But when you're talking about business leadership, you're somewhere closer to the top. And a good example, and I'll bring up KA again, is Roger Westermeyer and Steve Brady and crew, is changing the paradigm from market research, which is looking somewhere here, closer to the bottom, probably, and understanding supply base, et cetera, to actually doing analysis and gathering intelligence and exploiting intelligence on markets and industries on our own requirements, which is different. So I'll skip that in the interest of time. And so for my last piece is metacognition, and it's so meta. We all can and should challenge ourselves to become better learners, and that's what this is about. It's not just a useful skill for us in academia, but it's really a life skill. So what is metacognition? Metacognition is the ability to think about one's own thinking. If you hear definitions of critical thinking, it's critiquing one's own thinking, thinking about one's own thinking. So these two are pretty closely related. Second, being consciously aware of oneself as a problem solver, monitoring, planning, and controlling one's mental processes. and then accurately judging one's level of learning. As a simple analogy, when you go to the gym and you work out, you probably fine-tune as time goes on your routines in the gym, right? You understand what outcomes you're after, you track your progress over time, and then you're going to adjust your processes and your routines based on the performance that you see and what you hope to obtain. And you can do the same thing with your learning processes. So just 3 recommendations, and then I think I'll let you get up here. What can you do in your role as a mission-focused business leader? 3 recommendations. 1 is motivate learning. So research into motivation suggests that there are 5 bases, which may be important. This is just motivation in general. 1 is autonomy. The 2nd is competence. The 3rd is belonging. The 4th is self-esteem. And the 5th is involvement and enjoyment. My 2nd recommendation, target learning at the correct levels. So pull up Bloom's taxonomy. If you're in the learning business, pull up the taxonomy. Make sure learning is at the right level. And then 3rd, encourage your employees to actually, to understand and improve their own learning. Ask them to look up metacognition, think about their own metacognitive processes, and how they can improve learning on their own to be better self-directed learning. On to you, think.
Well, good afternoon. Apologize about my voice. I'm running General Holt because he got me to a place where I knew about 500 people and I had to talk to all of them. Sorry about that. So as any good consulting firm would do, we're going to have the least qualified person up here to give you guys actual recommendations. So how do we take learning into action? As a requisite hillbilly on the PhD panel, I like to look at everything from a fishing context. So individual learning, cultivating ideas, and taking risks, right? At the end of the day, when you talk about like why we're here, what we're doing, it's that taking risk part, but not just the taking risk, it's taking informed risk to take actionable mission, impacting action is what we're trying to do. So from a fishing standpoint, the way I see this is that individual learning is sort of your tackle box, right? Like I gotta have stuff in my tackle box before I go fishing. The cultivating ideas, though, is that no one's told me where to go fishing, where the fish are at, I'm probably not gonna actually catch anything, right? I gotta do that. Taking risk is I gotta know where I'm casting and I gotta be willing to take that cast, right? That may be an exciting analogy for you guys. I'm from South Carolina, so I love it. One thing I want you to talk about, or to think about when you're looking at your organization is, especially think about this from the leadership all the way down to the lowest airman. The idea of espouse theory and use, and this was really important to me because we do this a lot in the military, the government, bureaucracies in general, which we have espouse theory, which is sort of what we'd like things to be like and the way we say they are, simply because we'd like them to be that way, but they're not. And so you have to be willing to look at what's the theory and use, how are we actually doing this? And that's the diagram up there. If you've never seen The Blind Side of the Elephant, it's one of my favorite things. It's an old Indian proverb that's sort of looking at the idea that everyone is looking at the elephant blindfolded and just feeling their piece of the organization, and so they all think it's a different thing. And this goes back to what everyone's been saying about like get out and know your customer, know the organization, understand it, because all of these learning things that we're talking about can't get put into action if you think that you're looking at a snake or a tree or a pole or whatever it is. And then the quote up there is one of my favorite, which is the most fundamental assumption of the underground managerial world is that truth is a good idea when it's not embarrassing or threatening, which are the very conditions in which it's especially needed. And I think that's really important when we get to the taking risk part, right? Which is like, don't tell people to bring me all the information if you're not willing to accept really bad information, because that's the most important information to receive. From an individual learning standpoint, what are the things that we can do? This is our tackle box, right? And I feel like this has been something that people have really given me a lot of opportunity to do for myself in the Air Force, and even when I was at the NRO, I just had amazing opportunities everywhere that were sort of outside of where you might imagine get those at the level I was at. So things like executive education, you might believe, like, why would I send a lieutenant or a captain to executive education? Doesn't make any sense. The NRO did, and they sent me, and it was remarkable. And you'd be surprised what our people with 3 to 5 years of experience have on industry and what they can bring to an executive education course. This is a phenomenally professionalized workforce above and beyond what you see on average out in the companies that I went to executive education. Deep dives. This is sort of, going out there and having conversations with people that you work with and learning about like what you've done and what they've done and just a conversational standpoint, right? You're trying to understand it. It's like the hot washes, the effective hot washes, if you guys can remember that village you've actually been to. These are really important. Advanced education opportunities. You know, as an individual, think about that. You know, I know that in a lot of cases with professional development, sometimes you have to check a box. I get that, I understand that. But if you can be targeted in what you're doing and really try to get something out of it, because it's very important. The Naval Postgraduate School, I can't say enough. Like, you know, I'm an old dude that went to night school. There's nothing wrong with that. But until I had that experience being in the classroom and really having you know, that MBA experience, it was phenomenal. It changed my life. I think it's really important you guys consider that with the advanced education if you have the opportunity. Avid reading. This is critical, which is learning about things you don't understand. I talk to Bill all the time about computer programming because it's the worst. I'm the worst person in technology in the world, so I have no idea how I'll ever replace him, but he's teaching me and I love it. And so I'm reading up on it. And those are things, you know, I'd rather be reading about fishing, yes, but I need to know about this. And then the purposeful reflection. This is one that Colonel Landau's brought up a couple times and I think is really key, which is like being willing to just take the time to meditate on the situation that you're in and what can you learn from it. All right, this is the, now we got our tackle box. We got to figure out, like, where are we going to go fishing? Like, what's the best place to cast? And so a lot of the academic literature that I read looking at organizational learning and the way it's most effective is actually not in classroom settings. It's actually not even in formalized OJT. It is literally the water cooler, right? It's the coffee pot, it's the bar, you know, whatever you like to do, but it's that informal, because what you get is if somebody's willing to have that conversation in that environment, that requires a level of curiosity. Personal curiosity on the part of everyone involved, which means that there's going to be a sender and a receiver that are going to be taking that information and trying to synergize that into effective use, right? It's not just someone listening to PowerPoint slides like I'm doing it right now, right? But what we want is we want the A1C to be able to get to A2C, right? We want that knowledge to be able to flow. So things like informal idea forums. You know, if you can do that at the squadron or flight level, you can take time aside to throw ideas out there and really remove that requirement to fully flesh out ideas. This is one of the things that I think will kill the idea of going fast and pitching, is if you're saying like, hey, I have an idea that I think has impact. I haven't fully fleshed it out, but I'd like to talk to people who can provide the resources and the time I need to really do that. And you hit that barrier with leadership or someone else who says, well, until you've fully fleshed out all the risk and all the things that could possibly happen, don't bring it forward. Your PowerPoint's not ready or whatever. Your white paper's not ready. We really need to rethink that and say, like, can we take the time aside to take those half-baked ideas and see, do we want to finish them out and make them all the way through? You know, that's the remove the chain of command barriers to idea sharing within the reason. I get it. And to the young folks who are really wanting to, and it doesn't always have to be young folks, but people who have like young ideas and want to push those forward half-baked, be willing to own it though. Because if you go forward with like a big idea, it's basically just another form of complaining, and you aren't willing to back it up and support it, then your voice will eventually become noise that people don't want to listen to. But if you're willing to follow it through, you can be a really effective change agent. And then give credit where it's due. This is up and down the chain. You know, this is, General mentioned that we may never get the credit for some of the things we do and stuff like that, but within the career field, we can give ourselves credit for what we do. And we should be willing to do that up and down. And I think that's important. Then taking the risk, and this is the thing that always throws me off when we talk about risk taking, because if you've ever looked at like a risk cube or something like that, right? What is it? It's like probability and impact, right? We're looking at the probability and impact. If you take my fishing analogy, you have 100% probability of zero impact of catching fish if you never go fishing, right? And so that's the thing about taking informed risk taking and why it's important. But the way you can be informed is through that expertise. So you get the individual learning, the individual learning becomes a support system to create a greater organic organizational learning process. And that process allows you to have the expertise to be bold enough to take informed risk. And informed risk leads to being ahead of the adversary in ways that they couldn't foresee. Because if you're willing to take that risk and it's informed risk, then you're just smarter. And that's what we need, smarter. So learn the rules well so you can play the game better. Identify self-imposed risks internally. That's a big one, I think, in the acquisition community that we could really look at, which is, what are the self-imposed risks, right? Like, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how can we solve this problem. I love the Section 809 panel work. So it's like professional services. So I was like, yes, please, just do it. Just solve some problems. But we did that to ourselves, right? And I think that we can get that out of the way. So anyway, I just encourage you guys to become self-learners, learn how to go fishing, learn learn how to build a tackle box, and be kind to each other. And I think that's all I got. That's not working. So, thanks a lot.
All right, let's give it a round of applause one more time. All right, I'm trying to see. Hopefully everybody's feeling better after the visit with the docs. And they hated it. They hated it. All right, well, that was an awesome presentation. I think we can all agree. So right now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a 15-minute break. So let's be prompt and be back here before 1 o'clock. Thank you. If we can start taking our seats, please. Please take your seats. Mike Miller's got a gym. Come on stage. I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch. Please settle in for the next presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next presenter is the Director of Contracting for the Air Force Material Command. Please help me welcome Ms. Heidi Bullock.
Appreciate that. I'd just like to thank not only General Holt for bringing us back all together after an almost 10-year pause, but I also like to thank the great team that has brought this all together. And I just missed the memo where we got to pick our time slots, and I somehow got the highly coveted, most desirable right after lunch. So thanks, guys. Next time you do that, please make sure I'm on that email. I'll donate. Trust me, I'll donate. But anyway, this is a great opportunity, and as the other speakers have said, what a great opportunity, and you can feel the vibe. So General Trevino talked about knowing your audience. The other thing they tell you when you're talking to large groups of people is you need to have an icebreaker. I'm not that funny, so instead we find videos. Gentlemen, take it away.
Das hier ist in meinem Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Wissens. Das bringt das Überlebensradar.
Mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you? Hold on. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Okay, so while the video is humorous, it does highlight effective leadership and the need for training. And it's a good reminder to all of us to not prioritize just checking the box at the expense of mission readiness and capability. So with that, before we get started on the readiness, because I'm to talk about readiness across the Air Force enterprise, I would just like to give you guys a little historical perspective. So think about where you were in March of 1999. And I suspect there's somebody, at least I know, in the front portion of the auditorium here. In 1999, the U.S. and its NATO allies went to engage in a military campaign in Kosovo. And so, if you were part of Operation Allied Force, I'm going to take a page out of General Trevino's because it's after lunch and you guys need to move. Those folks who were in some way, shape, or form involved with Operation Allied Force, please stand. All right, we've got one, we've got two. All right, we've got 3 and 4, 5. Okay, well, we have more people who only have 1 year of experience in the room than this one, but that's okay. That's all right. What we were able to do in Operation Allied Force was prevent a humanitarian catastrophe, and we did it with solely air power. And don't take my word for it. Take the after-action report that was given to Congress that basically said that of a scope and a size, Allied Force was touted as the only campaign, only war to be won by solely air power. And that's because of you guys, okay? That's because of us. But that being said, if you look back to the middle and late 90s, our readiness was not where it should be. And you may think, oh, it was fine. It really wasn't. You had peace had broken out. You had the Berlin Wall that had come down. You had the peace dividend. And the peace dividend was paid in terms of a drawdown in personnel and the fact that we weren't going to necessarily need weapons and personnel because we had won the Cold War. However, the senior leadership of the Air Force and DoD recognized that no, readiness was not where it should be. It wasn't the same as the Allied Force, and nobody said it was. But it wasn't where we wanted it to be, and so we also had issues with recruiting and retaining. So they did a couple of different things on a couple of different fronts. First, they worked on the recruiting piece, and they did morale initiatives for the quality Air Force. So they did single room dorms, which paid big dividends. They also privatized housing, which I know is a bad little, 4-letter word right now, but at the time, it was a smart move. And on the flip side, on the weapon system side, they also had some really cool weapon system innovations coming this way. That included the joint attack. I'm going to screw up JDAM because it's not part of my normal coaching, but they did put JDAMs so that you had precision bombing night and day. So you heard the doctor talk about how the Air Force with the Western Airmail had a lot of problems because they couldn't fly at night and they couldn't fly in bad weather. We solved that problem with the JDAM. We also used, at that time, the Predator came into the inventory, and that provided the ISR for our forces. So AFMC was heavily involved in those initiatives on the weapon system side. So you can see that even though our readiness was not where it was, we were able to build that up on both the personnel side as well as the weapon system side. So where we are today for readiness, I'll tell you right now, is not where we want to be, and it's not where we need to be. Okay, we have a ways to go, but don't lose faith and don't lose heart, because we've been there before, and we can come back, and we will come back, and we will be stronger, and we will be more ready, and we will be more lethal. So readiness is job one. Next chart, please. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what I'm going to talk about. Maybe. Okay. Am I supposed to do this, Randy? Okay. Technology. Oh, there we go. You see, this is the same thing that happens. You start pressing buttons and they say, don't touch things. Okay. Okay, so Air Force readiness. So why is readiness job one? Is it because Heidi Bullock says it's job one? No, it's not. It's job one because Secretary Wilson, your Secretary of the United States Air Force, testified before Congress in 2017 that it was job one. She stated to the House, to the Senate Armed Services Committee, that we are at our lowest rate for full spectrum readiness in our history. And so what does full spectrum readiness mean? So it means a couple of different things. There's a couple of different components. So full spectrum readiness includes the seamless conduct of nuclear deterrence operations, so think ICBMs, think B-52s, think nukes, continued support of counterterrorism operations, and readiness for a potential conflict with a near-peer competitor, think China and think Russia. So, and it wasn't just Secretary Wilson. Major General Scott West, when he briefed the House Armed Services Committee Subcommittee on Readiness, informed Congress that while we were able to meet the nuclear deterrence piece and the counterterrorism piece, we were not where we needed to be for the near-peer competitor, and that would require a significant amount of training because readiness was out of balance. And these are your three takeaways, because the Air Force is small, the Air Force is old, and the Air Force is heavily tasked, particularly in airlift and ISR assets. So you couple, not only are we small, not only are we heavily tasked, and not only are we old, couple that with where we've been with the budget for the last several years and sequestration. And what that has caused the Air Force to do is make strategic trade-offs in order to meet the budget needs, the budget that we have been given. The budget that we've been given is not the budget that we need, but we've got to work with it. So we've had uncertainty with the budget over the 5 years of sequestration. It's had detrimental effects on the Air Force. And even though this year we actually had a budget passed, a full budget, it's been the only time in I think probably 10 or longer years that we haven't had a CR. So who in here hasn't operated under a CR? Anybody? Continuing resolution? So you all know how terribly efficient we are when we have CRs, right? Because we get 1/12 of our dollars, we're not able to do new starts, we have to incrementally fund everything up the wazoo. Yeah, it's a very efficient way to run an organization, and it helps with strategic planning. I'm being facetious here, folks, in case you don't know me. And Renee Richardson absolutely knows me. So we're also smaller than we need to be. So the Secretary and the Chief of Staff have told Congress and told us that the Air Force that we need is 386 operational squadrons. Today, we have 312. And for those of you keeping track, I'm going to tell you the number of squadrons that they believe we need. And I tell you this because if you're supporting those squadrons, you may be interested in the growth. So they're saying we need 5 more bombers, 7 more space, 14 more tanker squadrons, 7 SOF, Special Operations Forces, 9 CSAR, Combat Search and Rescue, 7 fighters, 2 RPAs, and 1 more airlift squadron. And then you may say, well, how did they come up with the 386? That's just like, you know, is that the Powerball number or the lottery 3 number that you're supposed to play tonight? So General Goldfein at the Brookings Institute in February, just a couple of months ago, said that they had run over 1,000 iterations in wargaming, and that's the number they needed, the 25%, because it's the right force mix that they need based on those wargaming iterations. So it's not just a number that they pulled out of the air, rather it's based in the wargaming results. So I talked about why we want to grow. We're too small. Let's talk about how old we are, how old our aircraft are. They're pretty old, folks, and this is kind of scary. So you take a look at the B-52, the bomber. Its average age is 56. We have a project, and I know there's Fighter Bino, Dennis Lovejoy is in here. We have an initiative where we're going to re-engine the B-52 bomber to keep it flying. It's 56 years old, folks. It's older than I am, okay? Not good. Another, its twin in the H department is the KC-135. The KC-135 is responsible for 87% of our tanker support. Think about that, folks. 87%. Do we have the KC-46 coming online? Absolutely. But right now, who's the workhorse? It's the KC-135. We have PCO from the F-15 SPO in here, and she can tell you just as easily as I can that the average age of an F-15C is 34 years. But more problematic than that is it only has 8% of its useful service life left. 8%, folks. You might say, well, that's not that big a deal. Well, consider this factoid. It's also responsible for 44% of our air superiority platforms. So that is a big deal, all right? Now, a certain number of F-15 airframes will get what's known as a service life extension. And that's great, because it extends the platform and the aircraft. The problem is you got avionics in the F-15. And avionics are the computers, and they need to be modernized, and that is expensive, all right? So you might be able to extend the service life of the aircraft, but if you don't work on the avionics, not really that good of a deal. F-16s, you say, no problem, we've got F-16s, right? Yeah, we have F-16s. They're 27, they're youngsters, you know? They're 27 years old on average, and they've only used up 82% of their service life. Woohoo! We have 18% of service life left. However, the good news is that they're going to do SLEP for over 300 of the F-16 aircraft, and that will keep them flying until 2050. So again, good, but not where we need to be. So you may say, well, what about the other platforms? ISR and aircraft lift. You know, think about cargo, think about C-130s, think about C-5s, C-17s. All right, they face similar problems in specific areas. The majority of the ISR platforms are unmanned aerial vehicles, and in 2018, just last year, the numbers fell from 371 to 220 with the retirement of the MQ-1 Predator system. We have the Global Hawk. It's a great platform. The challenge with the Global Hawk is because of gross weight restrictions, you're not able to put all the sensors on the platform that you need to. And again, think about ISR. It's not the fact that it's loitering around in the sky. If it doesn't have a sensor on it, it really doesn't do us a whole heck of a lot of good. So we've got to be able to find platforms that can integrate the sensors. We also have the U-2, which is now 35 years old and performs an ISR requirement. It has no scheduled retirement date at this time, but the folks that take care of the U-2 will tell you that it is an aging aircraft that needs support, and our friends at Robbins support the U-2. Hello, Michelle. Anyway, Dr. Roper talked about J-stars and rivet joint. Those were both built on Boeing 707 platforms. The last one came into the inventory in 1979. Now, Dr. Roper talked about how the new JSTARS is going to be known as the Advanced Battle Management System, which is envisioned as an all-encompassing approach. So it's going to be multi-domain, and it's going to contain both airborne and ground battle management, command and control. And it's designed to support joint and coalition partners in the high-end fight of tomorrow. And certainly not the last, okay, we'll do this again. Certainly not last but least is the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter. Now, the Joint Strike Fighter has had several challenges. IOC slipped in initial operation capability, slipped from 2013 to 2016 because of the challenges that Lockheed was facing. And it is now moving toward FOC. It's very much a system of systems platform that relies heavily on software. And today, as F-35s are rolling off the production line, they're incorporating new modifications in the production line as they roll the platform off. But I will tell you, I was just out at Nellis a couple of weeks ago and received a briefing at the Warfare Center there. And the fighter pilots love the F-35. It is absolutely, positively kicking butt in the red flag exercises and other exercises. So we're getting there. We're getting there with the F-35. But that is why we need to make readiness job one, because we're too small, we're too old, and we're too heavily taxed. And the national strategy recognizes this. And so, again, that's why Secretary Wilson said readiness needs to be job one. So how are we, as a contracting community, what are you guys all doing for our part to posture our organizations to be ready to win any fight at any time? And so I would tell you that that is, queuing up the slide, the flux capacitor. We even have a video to go with this for those who are young and have never heard of Back to the Future.
First, you turn the time circuits on. This readout tells you where you're going, this one tells you where you are, this one tells you where you were. You input your destination time on this keypad, saying you want to see the sign of the Declaration of Independence. Or when it's the birth of Christ. Here's a red-letter date in the history of science, November 5th, 1955. Yes, of course, November 5th, 1955. Wow, okay, what happened? That was the day I invented time travel. I remember it vividly. I was standing on the edge of my toilet, hanging a clock, the porcelain was wet, I slipped, hit my head on the edge of the sink, and when I came to, I had a revelation, a vision, a picture in my head, a picture of this. This is what makes time travel possible.
Okay, so what makes readiness possible? The flux capacitor. Who is the flux capacitor? The flux capacitor are you. You are the flux capacitor. You will make readiness happen. Not some machine, not anything else. You will make change and readiness happen today. So you guys are the key to readiness. In the readiness framework, following, I don't know why I got to follow 3 HPDs. They're like really smart. I'm not, but that's okay. The readiness framework, the folks who do studies, that would be like Colonel Landau and Major Murr and Where's Fink, even though he has no voice. You know, these are the smart folks. And when the smart folks look at the business attributes and the behavior priorities that leading companies possess, it reveals 4 traits. And I am benchmarking the Air Force contracting against the leaders in business. And those 4 traits will ensure that a business is ready. So how are we going to be ready? This is our readiness framework. So the first trait, and you've heard this already, Dr. Roper talked about it, Colonel Landau talked about it, it's culture. It's culture and management. And this is the climate that you set for your organization. This is the climate that General Holt has set for all of us when it comes to change. And change is allowing for innovation. Change is allowing for optimization. And it's able to identify and quickly act on ideas, opportunities, and challenges. In years past, we would probably not have picked contracting as the leading change agent in acquisition. Maybe. I doubt it though. You know, we have the reputation of being slow, risk adverse, and so forth. But we are changing, and we are changing because of General Holt and the leadership that he's providing, as well as everyone up and down the chain. We've heard about it so far today. Continue to press that. And within the contracting field, we've got in the flight plan that is getting ready to roll out. You've heard about this from, again, Colonel Landau. You've seen it in the hallways here in the window. Line of effort number one, mission-focused business leaders. That's what you guys are. I don't care if you're an airman. I don't care if you're a copper cap. I don't care if you're an SES. You are a mission-focused business leader across the board. Lieutenant, same thing. You guys are leaders. Line of effort number two, being led by champion here, but I don't do any of the heavy lifting. It's my team. Tools, not rules. We're going to reimagine the Air Force contracting online presence. We're going to reduce the instructions and the mandatory procedures. You've got owning the high ground, led by Mr. Baumann, where you optimize the acquisition excellence. And then again, you heard General Trevino this morning talking about expeditionary contracting as a joint force capability. But that's not the only place that we're making change. General Holt has already delegated, you heard Dr. Roper, delegate to the lowest level, right? That's what he said this morning, empower your folks. That's what General Holt has done. He has lowered the clearance level to $1 billion to the SCOs, the senior contracting officials. And again, listening to Dr. Roper, what are you doing with that? Are you then re-delegating that down? So again, that's line of effort. That's another area where we're changing, where General Holt is changing. We've been able to stand up offices. I know Dr. Roper, maybe reorganizations are not us, but they're at times our needs. So we have, I know Bill Surrey is here, we stood up the Space Rapid Capabilities Office out of Kirtland last year. We also stood up the Rapid Sustainment Office at Lifecycle Management Center, again, fostering that development into the sustainment arena. Bottom line is the initiatives, among others, are designed to enhance our workforce's ability to execute our mission quickly and correctly, and ultimately develop that culture where it's just baked in and it's normal business, normal practice. Additionally, we have the great, rich tradition of thinking outside the box. Again, Hap Arnold, thinking outside the box. So I'm just going to highlight 4 of these out-of-the-box initiatives that have occurred recently. The most recent one is the Vice Chief of Staff Challenge, which you hopefully have heard about, but you may not have. And this is a relatively new program. It's designed to solicit innovative ideas to solve Air Force level problems. And this is a priority that the Vice Chief has picked for the Air Force. So this is not ground up. This is the Vice Chief identifying a problem. And the first PCC was focused on improving multi-domain operations to allow warfighters to see their operating environment more clearly and succinctly. The second one, and I suspect a lot of folks have heard about this one, is AFWWWTS. And that's connecting innovators and accelerating results. AFWWWTS was created in 2017. They've got an office out in Las Vegas. They are standing up. The AFPC guys are trying to fight folks for it down in Austin, Texas. So again, you've got folks who are connecting academia and small businesses and innovators with Air Force needs, trying to solve Air Force problems. I suspect a lot of you have heard about the Spark Tank Challenge, and this was a platform for airmen to showcase their innovative ideas to the Air Force leaders. There were over 320 Spark Tank ideas. 6 were briefed to the Chief of Staff and the Secretary, and for good measure, they had Mark Hewitt and George Steinbrenner IV on the panel to just understand and see their ideas. So that was pretty cool, and that was just late February at the AFA convention. So it's not just new and innovative things that we are looking to change. We're also looking to change in our policy and processes. And we've talked a little bit about policy and processes. But the question is not whether or not they're in place, nor is it how are they formalized. Rather, it matters that they are designed to be adaptable and to support flexible execution. And this includes mechanisms and capability to handle new and exceptional requirements effectively, which means you need to be agile. So you may say, well, what are we doing in the policy arena? Well, for starters, the Secretary of the Air Force, one of her first initiatives when she came into office was do a complete review of the AFIs, the Air Force instructions, and say, hey, if it doesn't empower them, they have to vote to get on the island. Along the same line of being voted to stay on the island, vice get off the island, is AQCP's Operation Clean Sweep, which is being led by Jerry Pellickman and her team, and it is looking across the AFARs, across the enterprise, at not only the AFARs, but the mandatory procedures and the informational guidance, to see again, what do we need to absolutely positively keep, with that being a minimal amount, vice the regulatory, thou shalt do this, this, and this. So again, we're trying to let the folks know not what they need to do and the why, but not necessarily the how. And then who in here really hasn't heard about other transaction authorities? I'll tell you, we're tracking them up at AFMC just from a best practices and to be able to share those best practices, and here's who you need to contact. OTAs are not only the purview of Air Force Research Laboratory, they're being done out at SMC, they're being done on the system side, they're being done on the logistics side, okay? I think they're even being done on the test side, guys, so operational, absolutely being done. So across the spectrum of Air Force contracting, other transaction authorities are being utilized effectively and smartly, and I would encourage you to do the same. But the bottom line is that our policies and processes are changing at a rapid rate right now. Again, to Joe Trevino's and Colonel Landau's point, we're changing a lot and we're changing quickly. And the big key is, again, I love Colonel Landau, keep up. We gotta keep up, guys. We gotta keep up. So another trait of these successful businesses that will make us successful in the readiness framework is the rich communicators. And this is the ability, this is the ability of an organization to communicate both vertically, horizontally, to all types of different audiences, because you saw the mix here of super duper experienced folks and the new folks that have just come in that only have a year's experience. So we have a bunch of different platforms. Today, Dr. Roper was interviewed by Amber for the contracting experience, and that will be pushed out in a couple of weeks. So that is the newest. It's not necessarily the greatest, it's just the newest form. You've got General Holt who does his fireside chats, which I am sure we all read, okay, because they're very good. But we also have the AFMC monthly bulletin, where most people go directly to the fiscal law flash, because it's really good to hone your skills on the fiscal law side of the house. We've got the AFMC policy bulletin, and then finally, but certainly not least, is those of you that contribute to the Air Force Contracting unofficial Facebook page. I will just tell you that while some of us may not comment on the Facebook page, we absolutely do read it, and we take those inputs seriously. And so I appreciate that feedback, even though you may not get, a thumbs up from Heidi Bullock. That doesn't mean I'm not reading it. I try to minimize my social media footprint, but anyhow. So trait number 3 is enabling solutions, and these are business applications and productivity tools in place to enable a productive workforce and efficient, effective, flexible execution. So how are we going to do this? All right, so I hope nobody has a roll from lunch and is not going to throw it at me. But the first way we're going to do this is Con IT, Justin. Okay? So, yeah. Yes, I know, he can snicker, I got it. But here's your problem. Here's our problem statement. Oops, sorry. Allie, your point, don't touch yourself. Okay? So, here is our problem statement. Air Force contracting lacks a standardized, integrated method of anticipating and responding to current changes in process, regulation, and technology across the contracting domain. And this lack of agility results in non-compliance with laws, which maybe you may not care about, but the GAO and Congress absolutely care about. They also mean that we're not complying with regulations. There's also an over-reliance on manual intervention. Why would you want to do something twice if you can do it once? And poor data quality, which again, maybe the Air Force really did spend $70 million on soybeans last year, but I don't think so. So that data quality needs to be in there. And so we need to have a more consolidated and globally accessible approach. And just some data points. There's a NDA, National Defense Authorization Act 2013, that mandated reporting requirements, and less than 40% of Air Force buying offices complied with that requirement to transmit contract information to using procurement data standard. And that is the DoD-wide standard for creating and processing and sharing procurement. Additionally, since 2012, over 60% of the existing contracts were either missing or had incomplete clauses. Now, you can blame CON-IT's clause logic for some things, but you can't blame it going back to 2012, folks. And again, if we're going to be agile, we need not only to be able to analyze the data, and Karen Landau talked about how they're collecting the data, but we've got to collect good data. If our data is not good, we cannot make informed decisions. So these things all tie in. And we want to get to where we're able to do contract requirements, contract generation. We'll be able to look at the reports for contract management, contract performance, and the ability to understand the whole contracting domain process management. But there's also other enabling capabilities. So Roger Westermeyer's gotten a shout out, Steve Brady's gotten a shout out a couple times. FICA has business competency cell that can help you analyze the information and analyze your spend. You also have category management, which I know the operational side of the contracting continuum knows about, but for those of you that are not familiar with category management, throughout the Air Force, the teams are taking a closer look at what their spend is, and they're realigning their workload to common areas of spend to increase their efficiency. Why would you want to do your own contract for transient alert facilities when there is an IDIQ that you can just issue a task order against? Seems pretty smart to me to leverage other folks' work. And I'd like to give a shout out to the 773rd, to Colonel Landau and her team for what they did to achieve incredible results with the medical community. Not only did they reduce their acquisition lead time with a historically difficult customer. I'm a doctor, just get it for me, for God's sakes. No, okay, no problem. Not only did they reduce their acquisition lead time, but they made themselves a valuable member to their requirements organization, the medical side of Air Force, the Surgeon General, and so forth. So kudos to the 773rd and what they've done. And it's not just on the operational side that we're seeing innovation. So AFMC and Lifecycle Management Center came together and developed a sole source toolbox for sole source procurements. And this has had great efficiency. I'm going to just point out one story, and this is just one, and there are several. But with the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, AMRAAM, Lot 32, using the toolbox and using the data from Lot 31, so you get the idea that the AMRAAM has been around for a little while, you know, Lot 31, Lot 32. But Lot 32 was able to be negotiated 10 months faster and at a 16% savings in comparison to Lot 31. So again, you're seeing innovation, you're seeing agility. And so as an Air Force and as a contracting community, we're doing our part to help and foster Air Force readiness. Of course, we still have a long way to go. And then finally, I would just like to not close, just quite yet. Next chart, please. Randy? Maybe. Okay, Heidi, you're supposed to do this again. Oh, nope, individual readiness. Okay. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of things on individual readiness, because even though General Trevino talked about the joint contingency support, I just like to challenge the military. Are you really ready today to deploy tomorrow? Okay, that's great. I think there are probably some people that would, if they were asked, perhaps not in this forum, they might say no, all right? And that's okay. But you need to get ready. And it's not just being physically fit, it's not just your immunizations, it's not just your contingency contracting training. It is about having that conversation, if you're dual military, with your family members. You know, you probably like your kids, but are you sure your relatives want to hang out with your kids for 6 months? Just saying. Mine did, but you know, maybe I was the exception. You have to expand your comfort zone. Are you being trained? Are you training your folks So that, are you expanding their comfort zone so that they are ready for anything that comes their way? And even a little thing, how many of you guys, just a show of hands, have mutual funds? Okay, good, that's good. Now, you all know that when you get ready to do taxes, and at the end of the year, your mutual fund will send you a little statement, right? And tells you this is how much money the mutual fund has hopefully made. It might tell you how much it's lost, but hopefully you got the ones that, you know, are in the plus. Well, this year, my husband reminded me that I had 12 statements, financial statements, that were in my maiden name, and that my mother was the beneficiary for. Now, that probably wouldn't have been a problem if I just got married like 6 weeks ago. I've been married for 22 years. So perhaps, just perhaps, I might want to take a look at that. Not that my mother would turn it over to my husband, but you know, my siblings might get in there too, type thing. So that's what I mean by readiness, all right? It's not just, do you have your shots? It's not just being physically fit. There are a lot of other things. You may have personal situations that have changed in your life. Make sure you're prepared for that. Civilians, I get the question all the time. I want to deploy. I got the sign, 10 minutes, thank you very much. I want to deploy. Okay, great. Do you know what you're doing? Because the deployment environment is not a place to train a new civilian. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm sure they'll teach me in a deployed environment. No, that is not what we do. Are you prepared to walk a quarter mile, and I'm not exaggerating, to go to the bathroom? Because you will, all right? So again, civilians, I love that you want to support the fight and so forth, but from a readiness perspective, are you truly ready? Are you truly trained? Are you prepared to do what you have to do? Because remember, mortars don't have a little GPS thing on them that say, oh, I'm sorry, that's a civilian. That's a non-combatant member. Oh, we won't kill that person. We'll just go for that military member. No, it's indiscriminate. So just keep that in mind if you decide that you want to support the warfighter in an AOR environment. So finally, in summary, I'd just like to say that we live in a contested environment. Sure, there we go. Air Force readiness should be job one for you. And then finally, it is up to us, because we turn dollars into mission capability, folks. Nobody else turns dollars into mission capability. That's what we do in contracting, and we do it really, really well. And finally, I would just like to say thank you very much to each and every one of you, regardless of your rank or your grade, regardless of what type of contracting you are doing. We all contribute to Air Force readiness, and without each other, we would not be successful. So for each and every one of you, thank you very much for what you do, and if there's any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Okay. Excellent, we have hit the microphone, so there are no questions. Very good team, excellent work. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Summit's going to be taking a break. Please return to your seats at 14:15. Thank you.
You're fine.
Never
going on? Oh, you're good. Weird things that clarify. Always get quoted now. You know, I like height. I get quoted. I get it. I fall. Whatever you guys are comfortable with, I'm just asking you that. What would we all be comfortable with? I would just like to get into place. This I'm not eating whatever so all I want my team, they got it They went low.
Please begin to take your seats.
I gotta get back. Alright. Alright. You probably need to start getting a lot of those. Check. Hey, you know what it is?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me now with the mic? Sorry. All right. Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Derek Lau. I'm the Director of Contracting for FICA, Operating Location ACC. And I want to thank General Holt for giving me the opportunity to talk about our contingency contracting officer's response in response to Hurricane Michael and border support operations. But more importantly, it gives me the opportunity to introduce those leaders on the ground that were fighting this battle from the front line. Before I introduce those folks, I want to talk a little bit about the nature of the storm and a little bit about what was going on at the ACC CAT to understand the full environment of what these folks were facing. So on October 8th, Tropical Storm Michael officially became a hurricane. The following day, it strengthened from a Category 2 to a Category 4 in an 18-hour period. It was then that the wing commander ordered the evacuation of Tyndall Air Force Base. The next day, Michael made landfall at noon as a Category 5 with 155-mile-an-hour winds. It was a very fast-moving, high-intensity storm that caught a lot of us off guard. But fortunately, even though that it was a fast-moving storm, that there wasn't a lot of flooding, right, that we saw from the previous years. But the 155-mile-an-hour winds absolutely devastated Tyndall Air Force Base. Fortunately, because the wing commander did not waste time, he issued the order. Tyndall Air Force Base experienced no loss of life or significant injuries.
And get out if an evacuation is ordered. This storm has the potential to bring devastating impacts to communities across the Panhandle and Big Bend, and every family must be prepared.
The hurricane made landfall, took direct aim at Mexico Beach where Ginger was, and we had an anxious moment. During our special report, we actually lost contact with Ginger at the height of the storm.
We are seeing the front of the most dangerous part of the storm begin to move in. Trees are coming down in front of us, power lines have come down.
Full Hurricane Michael, Category 5 hurricane with winds at 155 miles per hour. That is several miles per hour shy of Category 5.
Category 4 hurricane, almost Category 5, packing winds up to 155 miles an hour. Strongest storm that hit the U.S. in nearly 50 years. Look at that wind right there now. Hundreds of thousands of people across Florida and Georgia waking up to scenes of total devastation. You see this school right here completely exploded.
It's a long road for the tired man, and you can see your face, and you'll be home in spring. I can wait till then. I heard on big. And all this too shall pass, as long as one lasts long. I wasn't there to take his place.
it's time to eat. You'll be on my mind, yes, yeah, we ain't got no money out of the I ain't afraid of working too long. When I don't know what I'm doing, I can fake it. I'm afraid of Jesus rolls away stone. I'm rising, I'll get up off the ground, run and hide. Pushing comes to shove, and I'm a fighter. When darkness comes to town, I'm a rider. I get out of my way for the fire. Survive. I'ma get down low so I can lift you high. An army couldn't keep down my desire. Yeah, I'm rising. I'ma get up off the ground, gonna get high. And pushing comes to shove, baby, I'm a fighter. When darkness comes to town, I'm a rider. Get out of my way, for the fire, survive. I'm a riser.
So in the initial aftermath, there were certain circumstances that made our job as contracting contingent contract officers a little more challenging. Probably the biggest impact to the recovery was the fact that the Tyndall EOC, their roof was ripped off, right? And all of the comm equipment, all the computers were on the second floor because of flooding, right? They're trying to protect from flooding, and they weren't thinking about necessarily a Cat 500, 500 winds. So that essentially made the Tyndall command control outside of that base and coordination non-existent. So the ACC CAT took on the role as the Tyndall EOC. And so we tried to manage that response from Langley, Vice, at Tyndall. We spoke to the wing commander twice a day on a sat phone. And right away, COMAC recognized the severity of the storm and the damage, and decided that it was far beyond the capability of one wing to do what was needed to get done to get Tyndall Air Force Base back in business. It left the immediate life, health, and safety to the folks at Tyndall. The recovery teams, the ride-out teams were recalled for that initial response, but he created 3 task force to get after the ACC priorities. The first task force was Task Force Raptor, headed by Maintenance 06. And whose job was to get those F-22s out of the hangars, get them back on flying status, and get them away from Tyndall Air Force Base. Which I know Jim has a slide talking about it, but that created probably about 72 hours of a fairly tense environment, as in one of the hangars, there was a leaning reinforced concrete wall, and it was leaning on an F-22 wingtip. And oh, by the way, there were 30-knot winds coming in 3 days. So it was a fairly tense ACC CAT during that, but I think Jim's going to talk about that. The other task force is Task Force Heart. It is a huge humanitarian effort, and so they want to take care of folks and folks with families, get them orders, get them somewhere else, take care of payment vouchers, things of that nature, taking care of airmen within 06, leading that task force. And finally, it was Task Force Phoenix, which was the rebuilding of Tyndall Air Force Base under another 06. The other thing that General Holmes wanted to reiterate is that the folks at Tyndall, those folks who are responding, are also victims, right? Especially we in contracting, we are used to going and deploying in support of contingent humanitarian operations, DISC operations. Those folks were victims. Many of them lost every material possession they owned, or most of their material possessions. Most had families who were evacuated in temporary locations, and they're working 15, 16-hour days getting that base back. And so we wanted the ACCCAT to take on as much as we could to alleviate the strain on the folks at Tyndall Air Force Base. So once, in addition to that, we also had a tremendous outpouring of organic support. Right? So we had units all across the Air Force who were chomping at the bit, seeing that we had a base hit, seeing the devastation when we get involved in the fight. So we had Red Horse, we had Prime Beef, we had maintainers, everyone chomping at the bit to get after rebuilding Tyndall Air Force Base. As you can imagine, what this did is it created a problem with requirements. Right? So at that point, we had ACCCAT acting as the EOC, trying to lean forward and anticipate what they need. The Tyndall CAT was starting to stand up. The Tyndall EOC is standing up, identifying requirements. We are getting requirements from the Wing Commander twice a day. The 3 different 06 task forces are generating requirements to get after their mission. And we also had, as commercial cellular service got back in service, we had individuals reaching out, phoning a friend. So we had all of these requirements funneling up to the ACCCAT, right? We did not have unity of effort right for OCS. So I marched over to ACC leadership, the CAT leadership, made the pitch for requirements review board, and got turned down. It was my biggest significant learning experience, or spectacular learning experience, I'm sorry, in that effort is that I failed to properly convey to leadership that while this is another meeting, we actually get after the mission, right? As opposed to making a fast decision that may not necessarily be the right decision. So I failed in that. I didn't get discouraged because I knew as Tyndall got on their feet, the ACC EOC role is diminishing. The real game is at Tyndall Air Force Base. So I hedged my bets, and I sent Captain Dorithus Bracey, followed by Jordan Sifties, and then finally by Captain Rob Rawlins, with specific orders to set up a requirements review board at Tyndall Air Force Base so we can coordinate this response and get back that unity of effort to lead that effort on behalf of the folks who are fighting at the local level. So one of those individuals is the commander of the 325th Contracting Squadron. So it's my pleasure to introduce Major Steve Fletcher.
I am not a lectern speaker, so I do like to pace. I got to get my steps in. Real quick, thank you, Colonel Blau, for the introduction. This afternoon, I'm going to share you a story of resilience. I'm going to share you a story of overcoming extremely adverse challenges. All right? But before we get started, I have another video I'd like to share with you. This is not photoshopped, ladies and gentlemen. Tyndall Air Force Base took a direct hit from Hurricane Michael.
The last few weather reports we had, this is going to be a stronger Cat 4, maybe a Cat 5, and Tyndall is the bullseye. We heard the roof start to tear away, some really loud metal ripping sounds, and a couple rip, and then you heard the whole thing go. When you walked outside, people weren't really saying a lot. What do you say? I mean, it was surreal. You could tell that the damage was significant. I think you could probably say in some cases the damage was catastrophic. Our base took a beating and our people took a beating. The recovery effort has been remarkable. It's been amazing. I can tell you with high confidence we're going to be better tomorrow than we are today, because I know for a fact we're better today than we were yesterday. And I couldn't be more proud of 1,000 airmen who have bed down here today, who have been able to accomplish so much in so little time.
When the evacuation order was given, we had one more meeting that morning, and my spouse and I, we evacuated to Macon, Georgia. And 5 days later, I received a call from my mission support group commander. He says, "We need you." So I came back. But before I came back, I did a couple of things. I know that I needed CCOs. All right? I know that I needed individuals with scar tissue that have been on deployments, all right, that can get the mission done. So I started making calls because everybody was evacuated. We had a CCO embedded in the base recovery element, but given the scope and magnitude of the destructive forces of the storm, only a small contingency from the BRE even came back to Tyndall because the roads were so bad. All in all, we had CCO boots on ground at Tyndall within 24 hours. All right? Thinking after careful consideration of who to recall back to build this team out, I started receiving calls from the right individuals with the right backgrounds that were fire and forget CCOs. They called me, "When can I get out there?" So we made the determination to go, and we all met out there. And it was intense. It was surreal. I can tell you, you can see pictures, you can see drone video post-storm, and it doesn't do it justice. And for the folks that have been out to Tyndall Air Force Base, they can attest to that. All right, the next call I got was from my buddy, Major Seidel. He said, "Fletch, what can I do to help you?" I said, "Well, look, man, I need real estate. I need somewhere to bed down CCOs. All right, I need somewhere to airlift supplies, CCOs, from Herbie to Tyndall." He said, "I got you, man. I got you." All right, make no mistake, the Air Force contracting family is well. I got numerous calls for assistance and support. And there was no playbook, there was no game plan for operating in a cone of silence. But we made it work. All right, with the FICA reachback support, they were able to find me a funding document in the event I needed to stand up at UCA on our BOSS contract. All right, our civil operations flight at Tyndall Air Force Base is contracted out. All right, that was all being worked. The Dean's coordination, that was being worked at one SOCONS. It came together. All right, one of our first projects we had to do, we had to secure the wing commander's fence. All right, so much lumber and timber destroyed everything. We had no fence. All right, the base defense squadron came here TDY. All right, and part of getting them home before the holidays was our ability to execute a temporary fence contract for the installation. It was a $1.8 million purchase order that was cut within 2 days. We were moving and shaking. We were taking risks. The contractor said, "Well, if you use cement at every post, it's going to take me an additional 45 days to complete." We said, "What about every third post?" "Sure, let's do it. My boss needs some fence." All right? Expedited legal reviews. We had no legal office. Everybody was evacuated. And FICA was instrumental in bringing those things together. As Colonel Blau was alluding to, this thing metastasized so quickly that we didn't have a lot of time for this. And the decision to evacuate undisputably saved lives that day. So what we bought? Right after the storm, 95% of the people at Tyndall were not permanently assigned. All right? We had people come into our base and support us, all shapes, sizes, and forms. We had Red Horse, we had Prime B, we had Navy Seabees. Guess what? Some of these people, they didn't bring their own supplies. They needed cherry pickers. They needed roofing supplies. They needed tarps. They needed X, Y, and Z. We got it for them. I can attest that the reason we saved the F-22 simulators is because of the rapid response movement of our CCO's ability to secure roofing and tarping material. I can tell you that we have protected numerous critical comm nodes and facilities from those materials. All right, and that's what we were doing. We were preserving decision space for the wing commander. Demo. Why are we doing a RAD every time we have a phase of demo? Why don't we just do a big RAD that encompasses all post-Hurricane Michael damage? Great idea. Wing commander signed it within an hour. And we are on numerous phases of demolition at Tyndall Air Force Base. Red Horse had a huge demand for aggregate. Our contractors are so good at Tyndall, our civil works contractor called me and said, you guys can use whatever equipment you need to aid in recovery and preservation efforts. I said, sir, I need some aggregate. I need some clean aggregate. He said, I got a 20-ton pile. I'll give you a fair price. And with our expanded use program, we did it. We did it. All right? We didn't need that stuff trucked in. The roads were too bad. All right? So it's that innovation, it's that kind of mindset we were in. We were in a declared contingency. We were deployed to work, essentially. I want to talk about a couple of challenges we faced. And this is the stuff that keeps squadron commanders up at night. Not knowing where your people are. Let me tell you something. AFCWWTS is great if you have internet connectivity and electricity. Right? So this has really forced us to look about how our people are going to evacuate next go around. And for those who aren't tracking, hurricane season starts Wednesday. All right, if it tracks east, if it tracks west, where is your designated safe location? Where's it going to be? All right, start thinking outside the box of what would you do to keep a pulse on your personnel in the event of a total combat. All right, anything that plugged in or anything that needed an internet signal was useless. You know, my pen and paper was my laptop. And essentially everything was handwritten down. There was a lot of fog, there was a lot of friction within the first 72 hours, and that was to be expected. But we got around those. All of our end of year actions that we worked so hard, you know, we had the third largest end of fiscal year in FY18. Kaput. All those 19 projects that were on our CTO, all of them got canceled. Right? The new buildings we repainted, the new marina we renovated, all right, the new heritage club that we restored, all right. Well, I can tell you the marina is somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, all right. Another significant concern was the area cost factor, and that continues to have me concerned. I can tell you prior to the storm, the price for a square tiles, roofing supplies, was about $75. Last time I checked, it was about $375. All right, we saw that with Katrina with the price alone. All right, CAT communications was a challenge, as Colonel Blau was alluding to, getting messages from Tyndall to Langley. All right, that was extremely cumbersome and challenging, just because we had no reliable cell phone connection. Right, lines of effort did get kind of, you know, wires crossed on that. There was all kinds of stuff generating. I get a call about, you know, this system is leaking radiation. No, that's not the truth. This is what's happening. All right. So a lot of that going on. Looking at these pictures, we slept in the con's office. CMERT was there. They had generators. They hooked it up to the wing headquarters, and we slept in the office that didn't have broken glass. Me and my CCOs, every night we were there after. We lost track of how many hours we worked during the day. The middle picture, this storm even had an effect on the local wildlife. That was done by a black bear. That's a door at one of our TLS. All right. I've already mentioned about the lack of connectivity, laptops. That whiteboard, I know you can't read it, but that identifies key critical facilities that was on the wing commander's priority of saving. It identified the execution method. It identified if the envelope, the building envelope, had been damaged or punctured. All right? It identified the condition of the roof. Did it have water and gas? All right? And again, we had Corps of Engineers down here doing very detailed damage assessments throughout this whole process. Let's talk about the positive. The Requirements Review Board did great. It did. In my opinion, it knocked out a lot of things that would have gotten very hectic very fast. If I knew the Corps of Engineers had a requirement for a 20-ton crane, and the CVs had it, we just had one crane show up one day to knock it out. All right, there was a lot of specialized material handling equipment that we deconflicted through this process. All right, and there was a lot of requirements that came across our desk, and we said, well, who's driving this? What is the truth? Running this the truth? What's the priority? You know, Colonel Jeffson, my MSG, worked well with the PMO to kind of deconflict some of those things. Was there stuff that got through the cracks? Yeah. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. I can tell you the first day we stood up this Requirements Review Board, 2 people showed up. Jordan and I, we briefed Colonel Laidlaw. He said, yo, we got to run with this. Right? Next day, 5 people. Next day, 10 people. Towards the end, there was standing room only, because they knew it wouldn't get done unless they came. And they did. Spend analysis reports. I've had a little bit of familiarity with Aspect Light. At MPS, we did a touch on spend analysis and data mining. I tell you what, somebody had the idea of, let's take the spend analysis report, look at what your customers have bought over the past 5 years, hand it to them after the storm and say, look, this is what you lost. I gave each one of my MSG squadron commanders their spend report, and they had no idea what they lost or what they even had. All right, specifically FSS, they kept us extremely busy off that data. All right, I want to touch a little bit on commercial smartphone apps, specifically group threads. We set up different threads for CCOs. We set up specific threads for the CCOs, the expanded use GPC cardholders, FICA KC. It worked well because there's a limitation on the iPhone with how many people you can add to a group. All right, we found that worked very well. Just recently, we did a Huracan exercise at Tyndall, and we refreshed the Consol thread as well. And that was a good way to get information out to my people. I can tell you every week I had a teleconference with my evacuated personnel. And they had questions, as everybody. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of what's going to happen to Tyndall. And at the end of every conversation, I told them one thing. I can replace things. I can't replace you. All right, and that's the truth. CE has established a facilities disposition review, which was a repeatable process to produce a record of decision for each facility that was identified for either demolition, hold for master plan, or permanent repairs. This process worked very well. At the very beginning, and again, the master planning is the Tyndall of the future, right? At the very beginning, there was a lot being put into the hold for master planning, but what we've seen over the evolution over the past couple of months are more facilities are being pushed to demo. All right? That's driving on different phases of demolition as well. All right? In the state of Florida, you have to have an asbestos and lead survey before you start demo. All right? It has to be recent. It has to be current. We learned from the Corps of Engineers that had phase 1 that slowed down their progress. So what did we do to get after it? We incorporated it into the requirement. We incorporated a service for an archaeologist to be on site in the requirement because we were learning the mistakes from the Corps given the first phase of demo. Request for forces went phenomenal. And I'll get to that at the conclusion of my briefing. The pie chart you see here is trying to get a handle on what we did at the end of fiscal year. How many T for Cs? Right? How many of these requirements are still going to require, does the customer even need the stuff anymore? All right? So getting through that process was extremely difficult, but we got there. So I want to talk about a couple of lessons learned, and I broke this down by kind of as a CCO and kind of as a commander on the next slide. We mentioned the blurred lines between recovery and victim status, and that's a true statement. My CCO has lost everything. All base housing was devastated, and it was hard to, put in an honest day's work for honest day's pay and go to your primary residence to try to save your wedding pictures. That was a real thing. Okay? Know what's on your base. I had no idea that if you don't shut down an MRI machine in very specific methodical steps, that if the backup generator fails to provide liquid nitrogen to the magnets, bad things can happen. Know what's on your base. All right? Where are the fuses? Where are the munitions? Maintain a robust evacuation and recovery framework. That's something we're getting after right now. We're currently going under a major rewrite of our installation emergency management plan. Base ride-out team, we did not have a contracting asset and a pay agent on the ride-out elements. But I can tell you what we did have. We had 14 false contractors. And if it wasn't for them, post-storm, we would have never energized that grid in the amount of time that we did. But that brings into other questions. Who should and who shouldn't be on the ride-out element? We're looking into that. Hurricane checklists. Hurricane checklists are typically done in increments every 24 hours. When we have hurricane status updates, it's typically every other day, right? This thing changed so fast that we didn't have time to run the checklist. Well, what's on the checklist? Does it make sense? All those checklists are going to get rewritten for 10 force space. Single points of failure, I want to touch on efficiency versus effectiveness. Having one cell phone carrier is extremely efficient. When that carrier went down, we were not effective. All right. Evacuation planning at the squadron level, that's something we're rolling out too, based on which way next hurricane could track, getting a list of evacuation addresses. Emergency visitor listing, I encourage you to look beyond your home state for other sources of supply. A lot of our contractors were also devastated by the storm. OCS integration. I want to bring this up because I know we can bake in more OCS core competencies in the future. The RFF was great. The requirements review board was great. What about an oxy cell? What about something else? I know there's goodness here. And in the future contingency in response to a natural disaster, I know we can get better at it. We didn't practice like we played for this one. Cat 3 was the highest we went. So again, practice like you play. We're getting after updating our plans and making them better. And if any of you have any questions or would like to see our updated plans, I'd be more than willing to share that with you. All right. Again, I touch on this theme of there was no playbook for this. There was no, we thought we'd be evacuated for a couple of days and then come home to Tyndall. All right. We had people that didn't take their laptop. We had people that didn't take their uniforms. All right. There was no bug out bag. All right. We didn't do this. Tyndall never gets hit. We're protected by the bighorn. All right. Not so much. I used what resources I had, and we rolled out. made it happen. All right? Colonel Laidlaw always talks about these small wins keep forward momentum. He said, I need another small win. I can tell him, sir, we are 72% complete with grinding every stump on Tyndall Air Force Base. He said, that's what I needed to hear. All right? Small wins. If I can take a defender off an ammo gate 24/7 and get him a lockable gate, that's a small win. Okay? You gotta trust the doers, and you know who they are, and let them roll, because they will impress you. It's never too late to revamp your strategy. I throw that in there to make sure everybody understands how they fit into the big picture. How their recovery, preservation, and restoration operations are going to contribute to the mission of Tyndall Air Force Base. And don't make it complex. Don't overthink and make a bad decision. Okay? And you might feel alone. You know, we keep hearing this thing, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. There was a lot of that going on. There was. All right? Got to do something, because the moment you don't anticipate your customers or requirement owners' needs and demands and services, we don't want to wait. We want to get ahead of it. We want to give them the spend analysis support. Get with your BCE. What do you need? All right? Pull the requirements out of them if you have to. Stay positive. Life goes on. You got to make your people feel whole, and you've got to know when to take a knee. Operating in a contingency environment is the best drug in contracting. We love it. All right? We love being there. We love being in the thick of it. We love finding solutions, finding ways to get yes. All right? But if you run in the red, you're going to break something over a period of time. Thank God, my lovely spouse, Stephanie. Hey, you can't even remember what we talked about 15 minutes ago. I think it's time for you to come home for a day. I'll listen to the gentleman. All right. Keep an eye on your people, too. You know, having SOCONs open up their arms, having their TLF and BOQ, having that facility just to have a decent night's sleep, to recharge and reset. Got to keep an eye on your folks. So let me talk about where we're at Tyndall. So it's been a bit after the storm. I can tell you 2 months after the storm, we're still making it happen. All right? The weapons evaluation group is still launching QF-16 drones over the Gulf of Mexico. And yes, that is the QF-16 unmanned picture. All right? They're having Wesson exercises. All right? This is the only place in our nation's military where pilots can shoot a missile at something flying over the Gulf of Mexico. That's a big deal. All right? The Air Control School. Guess what? They're still graduating air battle managers. All right? Right after the storm, we gave them that capability and helped them get there as a team sport. Red Horse is graduating combat engineers. This year, they're going to have their largest graduating class. All right? Our engineers are learning how to use really cool technology to get after runway damage. All right? They're learning how to use surveying equipment to go downrange. This is happening at Tyndall right now. All right? First Air Force, America's Air Operations Center, monitoring all of the airspace over the continental United States. They're back in action 24/7. All right? One thing that's not up here is our CCOs directly contributed to the ability to provide LO maintenance for our Raptors. Low observable maintenance. It's happening right now because of what they did. Where are we going? In December, Secretary Wilson announced that Tyndall Air Force Base would be the future home of up to 3 F-35 squadrons by the year 2023. We got to get busy. We got to get busy. What that looks like short term, how are we going to execute $300 million of FSRM by FY19? How are we going to pay for the $3 billion rebuild? all right? These are bigger decisions, all right? The MQ-9. Right now, we're doing an environmental impact analysis. Tyndall Air Force Base is identified as the preferred location for MQ-9, all right? Talk about projecting combat capability if these things happen in 2023. It's going to be huge. Here's my favorite slide. These individuals volunteered to come to Tyndall away from their families and loved ones and friends to come under some very, very bad living conditions, all right, to work very long hours to preserve, restore, and recover our installation. And I personally want to thank the commanders and the spouses for letting them come here. And they truly are America's best. This concludes my portion of the briefing.
Thanks so much. The next individual I'd like to introduce is our PCO for our AFCAP contract, who's also located at Tyndall, who was evacuated to Orlando. But I tell you, you couldn't tell. I talked to Jim Garrett on the phone 24/7. There were days, especially with the wall, I talked to him more than my wife. It was amazing response, amazing dedication, amazing partner in rebuilding Tyndall Air Force Base. So I'm happy to announce
Everyone hear me? Right. Well, first of all, I've heard Hurricane Michael, I think you have too. You've seen it be called a Category 5, and you've seen it called a Category 4, correct? Which one is it? Doesn't matter. Yes, it does. You know why? Because if it's a Category 5, then all the people like me who live in Panama City will not have to pay an insurance deductible on all your repairs. If it's Category 4, then you got to pay the insurance. So, for those of you that have never lived on the ocean, I thought it'd be interesting for you to know that that's really the case. It's a true story. Okay, I was asked to give a response on AFCAP. I think most of the people in this room have probably touched or seen AFCAP at some point along in their career. AFCAP is the Air Force's contract augmentation program that supports all the different types of contingencies for the Air Force. So, AFCAP, right before the storm, by the way, I lost a video on here. Has anyone ever heard of Mike Seidel from the Weather Channel? Right? Okay, so I think this means something. About 3 weeks before Hurricane Michael, there was Hurricane Florence up in North Carolina, right? And during Hurricane Florence, Mike Seidel was like this. Oh, the wind is terrible. Oh, there's debris. I don't know how much longer I can stay out here. And then behind him, there's just people walking. So, he got fired. Because think about it, I've lived in Panama City, Florida for a long time. Every time we had a tropical storm, the Weather Channel built it up so big. I get, a lot of people in this room would text me, email me, Jim, are you okay? Are you getting ready for that tropical storm? My family all over the country. Jim, how's your house? It was a Category 1 tropical storm. It was nothing. It was like, we've had thunderstorms worse. All right, so then here comes Hurricane Michael. It might be a 1, might be a 2, but even if it's a 3, my wife Debbie and I were we've gone through 3s before. It was no big deal. We woke up Wednesday morning, uh-oh. All right, so some of the lessons learned, like Flesh mentioned, we should have been better prepared in certain areas. But I am very proud of the support that AFCAP provided. All right, so most of our folks evacuated the day before. Some people like to evacuate before a storm. I like to evacuate after. Not fun. I left, coincidentally, I stayed right down the street, and I worked with Colonel Blau and Major Fletcher, no kidding, 2 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, constant. But it was, I really enjoyed working with the ACC folks, I really did. But we did do something smart. We pre-positioned our AFCAP team lead, who was at the time Alex Larson, who Colonel Wigner stole from me recently, and Joey Willer, who is now the new AFCAP team lead. There's a picture of them right there. They went to Mississippi. They were staying in a little townhouse with 5 kids under the age of 5, 3 pets, and their wives. That was not a very comfortable environment. But they were there ready to go from day one. And they did a great job working with Fletch, working with ACC, working with Ms. Richardson, the IMSC staff to get funding and approvals. They did an amazing job. Accountability was difficult. We got a hold of most of the folks. It says 24 hours up there. I don't think it was 24 hours. I think I was probably more like 72. But that Saturday or Sunday, that's when I was able to find out, I was there. So I knew my house, fortunately, did not have that much damage. So I was very fortunate. I know my folks, Joey, for being one, had a lot of damage and had to do a lot of work with insurance and contractors. So I took over the AFCAP stuff on that Sunday. And that's when we started working with KBR and getting things done. Okay, within a day, Ms. Richardson approved our $93 million UCA. And thanks again, ma'am, for all your support over the years. She's been incredible to support us. She's approved sole source actions and UCAs from all over the world at all times of the day. And we appreciate that. IMSC was tremendous with getting us some funding. We gave KBR our notice to proceed. By the way, you might ask why KBR? Why did KBR get it? KBR was the next contractor on AFCAP that was in line to get an urgent action on AFCAP. It works like on a rotational basis that was drawn by a lucky lot. So they hit the jackpot on this one. All right, we weren't sure what was going to be at the time. So that's why we did get approval from Dr. Roper to go up to $593 million. Right now, to date, we have $293 million on the task order, and we've just begun negotiations, and we're trying to definitize it here in the next week or 2. So the total amount is going to probably be somewhere in the realm of $250 million of support that we gave to Tyndall. Okay, the first thing we did once we got approvals is AFCAP, along with the Army Corps of Engineers, we did all the structural assessments. So we had the KBR engineers were there, and you can see a lot of demo facilities, a lot of repair opportunities, and a lot of hold. The big number for hold was basically, okay, we're not sure what we're going to do with this building because we don't know what mission's still going to be here. So there's some pictures. Okay, I know more about mold and water mitigation and dryness than I would ever want to know at this point. We did it for 135 facilities, dryness for 110. Okay, debris removal. There's Hangar 5, the dorms. Look at it, look how much cubic yards of debris the KBR contractor removed from that base is just tremendous. A tremendous amount. Tarping, temporary roofing. Amazingly, that picture on the right, we had to fix that one twice because 2 months after Hurricane Michael, a tornado hit Tyndall and ripped the roof, the temporary roof, off what KBR fixed for Michael. So, as we've been joking, you know, we've had the Tyndall recovery, the tornado at Tyndall, the earthquake in Alaska that we supported, the Offutt flooding that we're supporting right now. What's next? Locusts. Excellent. And I was joking with Ms. Richardson about, oh, maybe famine is next. And we took care of that with the State Department. Okay, right after the hurricane, there was nowhere to eat. There was nowhere to get cleaned up. So that's one thing that AFCAP provided all the folks that were there on the ground. I'm proud to say that the kitchen and the laundry, we were able to turn that off recently. So that was a really good thing to do. Okay, Colonel Blau mentioned the F-22. There was that picture right there, there was an actual F-22, what is it, a $400 million asset sitting right underneath that wall right there. And that was some tense times, for sure. One of the big tense issues with that is working with the contractor because they didn't want the normal, regular liability clause. Because they didn't want to be responsible for $400 million. So that was another great thing that we were able to get support via Colonel Little and Mr. Martinez sitting over there. We were able to get reach back attorney support, and they did a great job at advising me and Colonel Blau on how to get that done. And it was a good news story when we were able to remove that F-22 from that wall, for sure. Okay, permanent repairs on AFCAP. AFCAP was only used for the permanent repairs that were absolutely required urgently. We had a lot of requests on AFCAP that were questionable with regard to urgency, like such as moving static aircraft. You know, we didn't want to put that on a UCA that's probably a little bit more expensive. So there was a lot of things that, you know, because we know, you know, the DoD IG is already coming. They wanted to see us this month. And we're like, hey, we haven't definitized it yet. Give us a little time. So there was a lot of things that we said no to. And I really appreciate working with Colonel Blau and Major Fletcher and deconflicting a lot of those types of things. They were really wonderful to work with. Okay, what went well? A lot of the what went wells and what didn't go so good are very similar to what Fletch had mentioned, so I'm not going to repeat them. I do want to say that the ACO, the CCO support and the core support was phenomenal. Also reach back support again from Colonel Little and Mr. Martinez. You know, because we don't do just AFCAP at Tyndall. We do a lot of other things at AFCAP that was just sitting, that had to get done. So I really appreciate the reach back support that we had for that. Again, the contractor was quick. In some cases, the customer was complaining that they weren't quick enough. When they tried to complete something, which, you know, you can make argument, yeah, that's great, but we need it right now. So KBR, if you happen to remember, was also the contractor that supported Hurricane Katrina, and there was a whole bunch of costs that they didn't pay for. So they were trying to go and trying to be as conservative as possible, with going as quick as possible. But they did a lot of work: structural assessments, mitigations, debris removal, sweepers. You know, sweepers you might not think are important, but with all that debris everywhere, it's pretty hard to drive a car anywhere if you have nails in your car tires. Medical records retrieval. The medical records storage facility was heavily damaged. Those records were very important to get out of there. We were able to do that. Okay, what could be improved? things that we struggled with in the beginning was, I'd always ask the question, Jim, how quick can AFCAP do this? So I'd be like, KBR, can you get this to us? When can you get this to us? Oh, yeah, we can have that to you in 48 hours. Well, what it really was 48 hours was the best case scenario. It might take a week, and that wasn't relayed very well. So those are the types of things that I think that we could do better in the future. And in fact, we're already working on, the hot wash to make sure that we're better prepared for the next disaster. Oh, by the way, like I mentioned often earlier, AFCAP is supporting OFIT right now with a $50 million task order supporting all the flooding. And lo and behold, we actually are taking these lessons learned and we're applying them. It's great, isn't it? And it's actually going very smoothly. It really is good stuff. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Colonel Bullock. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. It never ceases to amaze me, the creativity of our contracting workforce, especially in times of crisis. So we're going to take some time right now to recognize a team who really epitomize the mission-focused business leadership. So while the hurricane was just even before it arrived, this team sort of got together, started working behind the scenes, talking about migrating our servers to ConIT. Wasn't scheduled for another several months, but after the hurricane hit, I thought it would be a tremendous capability to be able to access those files from Wi-Fi. We have individuals who were evacuated at home and had access to Wi-Fi. They can get into the fight, get into the recovery. So this team of individuals got together, came up with that plan to migrate. They had to wait for several weeks to get access to those servers, but once they did, they had to figure out, okay, how do we get the server from Tyndall Air Force Base to Montgomery, Alabama? So they coordinated with ACC, they coordinated with AMIC, LCMC, and the AQC staff, and the Civil Air Patrol. So they actually had an aircraft land at Tyndall Air Force Base. I'm told not to ask if they got clearance, so I won't ask them. But they landed in between the C-17 sorties and C-130s. They gathered up a couple 100 pounds of servers straight out of Mission Impossible, ran those servers that the airplane flew it to Montgomery, and after 2 days, the full capability of 325th Cons and 772 ESS were brought to bear on that recovery. So it truly meant a tremendous accomplishment. I'm happy to have the time to introduce General Trevino. She's going to recognize these folks if we can bring folks on stage. There's 10 total. We have 5 here representing the whole team. But tremendous accomplishment for these folks getting after the mission, thinking outside the box, thinking creatively. I didn't even know about it until the aircraft was landing, so they did it all behind the scenes. So it truly meant a tremendous accomplishment. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Derek. All right. It's on? Okay, can you hear me? All right, so Derek asked me if I wanted to say a couple words beforehand, and actually I did, but that it's really to not just recognize the Jim Garrett and Major Fletcher and the team, but this team up here. I asked them beforehand what exactly happened, walk us through, and we saw that the hurricane hit pretty much on a Wednesday, and on Thursday they picked up the phone and started making connections. So just like Dr. Roper told us this morning, there are things that are happening in the background that you don't need to know about. That's what leadership is, because it will get done, and it's going, supporting and making sure that they have the assets and the resources that they need. And this team that we're going to recognize today proves that you don't have to micromanage someone to death. It's going to happen. And I'm just very proud of your leadership. Funny story, we were actually at Gunter when it landed. Totally unbeknownst to us, we knew it was happening, but we just happened to be there working with our LCMC team on something else, PEOS, and we walked by them in the hallway, we saw Sergeant Brown, and they were getting ready to start the ConIT migration. So all this is happening, and because of their leadership, it was happening in less than 2 days. Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Attention to orders. This is to certify that the Air Force Achievement Medal has been awarded to Master Sergeant Benjamin Ackerman, Tech Sergeant Benjamin Brown, and Staff Sergeant Corey Adam. And the Air Force Civilian Achievement Medal has been awarded to Ms. Denise Jackson and Mr. David Kegel for meritorious service 11 October 2018 to 23 October 2018. Master Sergeant Benjamin Ackerman, Tech Sergeant Benjamin Brown, Staff Sergeant Corey Adam, Ms. Denise Jackson, and Mr. David Kegel distinguished themselves by outstanding achievement while assigned to the Hurricane Michael Contracting Data Recovery Team. During this period, the team played a critical role in the recovery of contract databases belonging to the 772nd Enterprise Sourcing Squadron and the 325th Contracting Squadron following the devastation caused by Hurricane Michael. Through collaboration and coordination between two major commands, the Civil Air Patrol, and with the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Contracting, their actions were paramount to the retrieval, transport, and data migration of 320 pounds of equipment and 644 contract files into the Air Force's newly deployed Contracting Information Technology System. The team's swift actions directly supported 10 contingency contracting officers through post-hurricane recovery, preservation, and restoration in the storm-ravaged Panhandle. Their Herculean efforts played a significant role in not only immediate contingency contracting response capabilities, but also laid the foundation for all of Tyndall's future contract issuance and management. The distinctive accomplishments of Sergeant Ackerman, Sergeant Brown, Sergeant Adam, Ms. Jackson, and Mr. Kegel reflect credit upon themselves and the United States Air Force.
Okay, so roughly 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks into hurricane recovery operations, we got a warning order from NORTHCOM about Department of Defense border support operations. So after a flurry of phone calls, myself, Rob Woodman, and NORTHCOM divvied up that the Army of our North had a preponderance of responsibility, but also some Air Force installations were going to be involved in the effort. Inside the wire would be responsible of the Air Force, and anything outside was the Army. So I worked with Rod Woodman, since it was ACC location, that ACC would retain authority over those operations. So I made the phone call to Major Mark Mazzell, making sure that he was aware. Sure enough, he was. They were already game planning it. They knew the Army was coming, but at that point didn't know when, how many, or how long they're going to stay, but they had the support. So I reassured him. I said, anything you need to do to take care of your wing commander's mission, get it done, be flexible. Any support you need, Fight for KC was there. Truth be told, we were stretched pretty thin going 24-hour ops with the CAT, but I also knew that a fight was one large organization. If it was beyond our capability, I had no problem turning it over to another operating location. Ex-Ops is giving us tremendous support in support of the Hurricane, so I can say with full confidence, anything you need, we can make sure it happens. So I let him take that, and the men and women of the 355th Contracting Squadron hit it out of the park. Tremendous capability brought to bear in a very short period of time. So I'm proud to introduce Mr. Mark Mazzell.
Good afternoon. It's definitely difficult to follow up those two emotional briefs of declaration, presentation, and then the end of the first day. But I'll do my best, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what we did to support the DoD response and support the Department of Homeland Security for the border mission. I will tell you, this is not building the border wall. This was something completely different. And so first, let me just say thanks to Colonel Blau, the Air Force Contracting leadership team, for giving me the opportunity to stand in front of 700 of my Air Force contracting colleagues. I think the largest brief that I've given before this was probably 770, so I'm at about 10 times that number, and so great opportunity to talk to you all today. Another interesting tidbit is Fletcher and I actually graduated from the Citadel together in 2004. My heart goes out to his team and everything that they went through. His brief right now was actually very inspirational to me. Definitely got a little bit choked up, and to see a fellow Citadel grad go through what he went through and to take charge, it's indicative of who I know as an officer, an airman, and as a Citadel graduate. And so DoD supported Customs and Border Protection, so DISC Commission, right? Defense Support Civil Authorities, right? So that's what we were supporting. I'm sure you've seen it on the news, the concerns at the southwest border, and there's a lot of information flowing around. And we too were watching the news, and we understood that we're a base on the southwest border, near the southwest border. And then we heard rumblings that the president had hinted at pushing troops towards different installations on the southwest border. Us being in Tucson, Arizona, an hour from the border, that piqued our interest, okay? On 25 October, POTUS directed DoD support to Customs and Border Protection, also known as Operation Faithful Patriot. They essentially requested support from DoD to aid the mission to secure the southwest border, so that meant ground troops, that meant rotary wing aircraft, and meant many other things. We have a rotary wing mission at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, so you do process of elimination. That kind of shifted this NORTHCOM's needs toward Davis-Monthan, given that we had the capabilities to host fixed wing, rotary wing, and we also had a large installation with open land, and I'll talk about that. And so what happened next was NORTHCOM directed our North to conduct site surveys at a variety of installations. They visited Davis-Monthan Air Force Base on 27 October. We gave them a windshield tour of the installation. We showed them what we had, the capabilities that we had and that we did not have. We showed them a nice big piece of land, right? And we said, this is a nice piece of land, right here, called Sunglow City. And that's what we dubbed it, on the north side of the base, right? But it did not have any capability to house troops. It was a barren piece of land. They left the installation that day. They drove down to Fort Huachuca, which is literally on the border, and it's an Army base. And we figured, that's it. That's all we'll see of our folks from our north. Bye, see you later. 24 hours after that, they said, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, we're gonna bed down 500 to 2,500 Army troops at your installation so that they can operate out of and to conduct this mission. So that's when we got concerned.
we started to realize that we're going to have to put in place some infrastructure, a tent city, to support these troops. I believe I can go back. Okay. So that brings us to 30 October. Our wing activated their CAT, and we started to determine what we needed to support this mission. The main body, so the ADVON team began to flow on 31 October, and then the main body on 2 November. So that gave us 72 hours to put in place an infrastructure to support all of the Army troops. And so what we decided to do was to house them in hangar space in some tents that we had. But we did not have the tents to support 2,000 personnel that we were expecting. So what we did was we piecemealed the solution together. We reached out to Bear, the Material Maintenance Squadron at Holloman, and we received 2 Bear kits. They were pretty busy with Hurricane Tyndall response, but they were able to support. We also contracted out for life sustainment services. So think food, sanitation, and all of the necessary equipment to build out the tent city. Okay? And so that brings us to like our first obstacle, which was the pace of the deployment. And what we realized with boots on ground in 72 to 96 hours, that we had to conduct market research, solicit, and award contracts in an extremely compressed time. So if you think of the standard acquisition timeline as this, we were asked to do this. And so what we realized was that letter contracts were going to have to be awarded, similar to what was done with AFCAP, and we executed those letter contracts. We communicated with Colonel Blau and we said, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking about doing. We want to put in place a letter contract for hygiene services. We also want to put in place a letter contract for a commercial kitchen capability. The only way to provide sanitation and to feed troops in a compressed time. And that's what we did. And I can tell you, like Colonel Blau said, they were very busy supporting Hurricane Tyndall, but when I made that call and his response back was, listen, you've got a mission coming to you, you have to support, you've got my backing, that's all I need. I've got the backing of my contracting leadership up at ACC. We've got the financial backing from the wing commander who made a call to COMAC, the commander of ACC, to say, listen, go support, spend, we'll reimburse you after the fact. We ESP coded all of our funds. So the pace of the mission was intense, but letter contracts were the solution. And as the FAR and DFAR states, we definitized those contracts shortly thereafter, about 30 days, because we were spending money pretty quickly against these 2 large IDIQs. So we definitized them before we got to that 40% mark of outlays, as required. And it's the testament to the team that I have at Davis Month and guys who were contracting ninjas who understood the FAR, who brought all of these different regulations together, what was required to execute a letter contract, how we had to go through the definitization process. Just so you know, we hadn't executed a letter contract at Davis Mountain Air Force Base ever. But we had experts who knew how to do FAR research, who brought all of those pieces of the puzzle together to paint a picture of how to execute a letter contract to support this specific mission. The other obstacle that we overcame was the fact, like I said in the beginning, was that the operation was extremely nebulous. It was unknown. A lot of information was unknown. We would shoot up RFIs, requesting information to ACC, to our North, to Northcom, and say, hey, what's going on? How many troops are coming? When are they coming? And they just didn't know. It was a fast-moving train. So when we went through the definitization process, we realized we're going to have to definitize highly flexible contracting and pricing arrangements in the form of IDIQ contracts that I know we're all familiar with. And so that's what we did. We negotiated pricing arrangements for hygiene services based on 4 tranches of troop sizes, 0 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,500, and 1,500 and up. And then we executed task orders against those pre-priced claims. And that provided us the flexibility to move as the mission moved. We follow the mission with contract support. For our commercial kitchen contract, we negotiated a pricing arrangement with a vendor that we would only pay for meals served. And so we weren't outlaying and committing tons of resources to meals and food services that would never be provided.
and the contractor agreed to it, we negotiated that, and that saved us a ton of money. And it was also a flexible arrangement as well. I will tell you the vendor base that supported us, we kind of got lucky because the commercial kitchen contractor and the hygiene service vendor, they had actually just come off the California fire season. So I don't know if you recall back in fall of 2018, there was some pretty serious fires in California, and these contractors had just come down from supporting those missions. They had parked all of their assets and equipment, and about a day after that, we called and we said, hey, we need your support. And they stood up and they drove their assets from California, and they were on site and mobilized in an extremely short period of time. Building those relationships with the vendor base is absolutely imperative. And so we look forward in how we're going to build out bear bases and dynamically employ forces in different AORs. I think we need to think about those vendor bases and making sure that we have a deep understanding of what the vendor base can provide and can't provide in those AORs. It's absolutely imperative. We can't go in and think that what we did at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base is transportable to what we would need in the Yukon AOR or the PACOM AOR. And that's where we need to lean on a FICA KU and a FICA KH, those experts that have that understanding of the vendor base. The slides that I have behind you, they're kind of all over the place, and they're just some pictures, and I wanted to show you kind of some of the things that we did, really my talking points, really convey what we did and the things that, the obstacles that we overcame. Just a couple of lessons learned, and I'll move through these slides. Here was the plot of land that I was talking about before, right? No facilities, water, power generation. Okay? And here's what it looked like before, right? So it was nothing. It was a barren piece of land. Davis-Monthan Air Force Base 355th Mission Support Group was asked to build a bear base for 2,000 troops in a ridiculously short and compressed time frame, and we did that. Okay. And it was built in a week. And we were constantly tracking our ability to bed down and feed troops. And this is the after picture. And this was done in a week. Some of the best contingency training that we've ever had. You can build reality into an exercise only so far. General Trevino said that they simulate contracting in some exercises. I believe somebody mentioned that. You can't simulate what we did here. It's amazing, and this is one of my lessons learned, and I'm going to jump right to it, how much contracting was relied upon to build out this bear base. It surprised even me. The structured thought process that went into resourcing decisions was something like this, and this is how I kind of bring it together in a common sense manner in my mind. It was, do we have the capability organically at the installation level? So does Davis-Monthan Air Force Base have that capability? Yes or no? If no, does another Air Force installation have that capability that we can lean on? Yes or no? Or if they have the capability, can they deliver it to us in time to build out a bear base? Most of the decisions, like no, can we contract for it? And so requirements started to flow at us at a rapid pace. And so one of the lessons learned, and if you ever get the opportunity to build out a bear base like this, and you may, given the current world events and all the things that we've talked about today, I would say don't undercut the importance of contracting in support of building out bear bases, specifically in the joint environment. It's going to be absolutely imperative. And it was proven here. And so I'll give you a big picture of what we put together. So on the top, this is kind of the tent city we built out of nothing. There's the crisp where all the vehicles were mobilized. And you can see in the top left, that's Customs and Border Protection. That's why another reason why Davis-Monthan was chosen as the base to provide bed-down capabilities to Army troops that were supporting DHS and securing the southwest border, is that we were strategically located with the Department of Homeland Security, right? They are co-located at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. So leaders can come together from the Army, the Air Force, and DHS, coalesce, come up with a plan, and then act on that plan. Shower trailers, hand washing stations, that was a contract that we put in place. That was the idea, the letter contract that we awarded and then we definitized. And the other major contract that was required to support bed down was a commercial kitchen, just like this 773rd put in place to support Tyndall response. And you can see we actually have we got high voltage generators as part of that, the 2 bear kits that were loaned to us. There was also a spec kitchen that was put in place for lunch. So our meals, we served breakfast and dinner through the contract, and the spec kitchen picked up lunch. There was also a gym, medical, and a mobile field exchange that was brought in to support the Army troops. So they were there over Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? And so our contractor was phenomenal in working with us. They served turkey dinner at Thanksgiving, an amazing Christmas meal, and so it's really inspiring to watch the vendor base stand up and support the Department of Defense in any mission, and it was proven here as well. And this is just a location of Tucson, and the mission was basically that they would operate out of Tucson as the operational node, and that they would move out to the ports of entry to support DHS at the various ports of entry that are many on the Arizona-Mexico border. Some requirements: heavy equipment rental, sand, gravel. Here's our mobile kitchen that was put in place, mobilized in 48 hours, and then operational in about 72 hours. Hygiene services to include a full service laundry. Again, awarded in 24 hours, mobilized 48, in place and providing support in 72 hours. Shower trailers. And so just to close with a couple other lessons learned. The podcast. I think you made the comment about staying in your lane. The number one thing that I learned about supporting this mission was don't stay in your lane. Because timelines are compressed so fast that contracting them become requirement generators. It's amazing that we actually have more information and more insight and more information to provide the requirement owners and what we can do to build out a bear base than they even do themselves. And so don't stay in your lane. Move outside your lane. Because you will always be told to get back in your contracting lane. And I've learned this through 2.5 years of commanding the squadron. Everyone wants to tell you to get in your contracting lane. Get outside of your lane. Become a value-added member of the support group and the wing. The other thing is, and this sounds cliche, set priorities as the commander and don't micromanage. So I call this the "that's the hill, take it" analogy, right? I'm a contracting airman. When we ask the question, how many years experience do you have? I've got 15. My squadron has almost 200 years of contracting experience. Why do I have to be the answer guy? Why do I have to be the one that comes up with the solutions? When I've got a team that's been at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, some who have worked there for 30 plus years, know the marketplace, know the installation inside and out, what's on the base, what's not on the base, right? So I set priorities, 1, 2, and 3. I did not micromanage. I said, go get it done. And the team got it done, and it was very impressive. And so that was another lesson learned. That's the hill. The team goes and takes the hill. They set up flexible and adaptable contracting solutions. And like I said before, the experience that we learned supporting this mission was immense. We actually, the tent city's still there. The Army troops supported DHS. They, they put concertina wire at different points of the border. They did the mission that they were asked, and then the Army troops have departed. Freudian slip. So the Army troops have returned to their home station. But the tent city remains, and so we put in, our contracts were extended. They're in a quote-unquote warm status. We're not supporting an active mission with troops on ground right now. But again, given the news cycle, that could turn back on in a moment's notice, and we're ready to support. So, just quick closing. I don't think anything that we did was revolutionary. I think it was one of those things where we did what we were asked to do. And I think that that's what everybody in this room does, and they don't realize that what they do is so important, that just doing your job and doing it well and being the expert and being proficient is what we need in contracting. And when we all come together, it can be revolutionary, it can be innovative, it can be inspiring, and it can have an absolute difference on the mission. I believe anybody in this room, given the same, if they were put in the same situation, everyone would do the same thing, right? We supported the mission, and that's what we all do. If I had to boil down our accomplishments to one key characteristic or trait that was most important to the success of building out this fair base, it was decisiveness. Our team didn't belabor over the minutia. We knew what the target was. We put in place contracts. The contracts were awarded. We followed the FAR, the DFARs, everything that was required, letter contracts, IDIQs, how to definitize, how to communicate that up and get approval from a FICA KC. But we didn't belabor the point, and we just moved on and we supported the mission. I think just be cognizant of that when you're in a situation supporting a contingency event. You've got to move and you've got to move quickly. So again, we held the keys to success on many aspects of this mission. We decided, we acted. In my mind's eye, that's one of the many tenets of what it means to be a mission-focused business leader, right? Decide and act, right? The mission doesn't wait. If you don't decide and act, somebody will do it for you. The men and women of 355 Collins proved that in spades. Natalie Collins got the opportunity to brief General Goldfein on what we did. And Joanne Squire, Ryan Keller, Christopher Ramey. I mean, I could go on and on. The squadron as a whole came together. And we came together because the airmen in that squadron have the right culture and they know what it means to support the mission. They know what it means to be mission-focused business leaders, and they buy into it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
That was our last speaker, and I know we're bouncing up against our allotted time, and I'm also very aware that we are the last event before the social. So real quick, I want to thank you all for your time and attention, and most importantly, thank you for letting me introduce you to some amazing mission-focused business leaders who excelled in some very difficult situations. But before I leave the stage, I would be remiss if I did not ask for your thoughts and prayers for the folks at Offutt Air Force Base. Our 55 Cons contingent was reduced to 1. They're staying behind to focus on that mission, recovering that base from pretty severe flooding. The CCOs for 55 Cons did everything they could to mitigate the flood damage. They bought 240,000 sandbags, 45 tons of sand, 16 pallets of water, trying to stem the tide. Unfortunately, it was not enough. There were some locations on base that had 16 feet of water. There are 70 facilities impacted, some of which have 8 feet of water. So as that water recedes, we have folks from 772nd ESS on site working with DynCorp going through those buildings. But as we go through those buildings and assess the damage, those requirements will go through the roof. So keep the folks at Offutt, specifically the 55 men and women at 55 Cons and the 772 ESS in your thoughts and prayers as they recover off the Air Force Base. With that, I'm going to turn it back to our MCs who have some comments.
Well, I mean, that's one way to close out today. It's pretty good, right? Yeah, everybody's ready still? There it is, clapping hands. All right, well, we're going to make this real quick.
Yeah, first we wanted to thank our presenters today. Thank you very much. Also, we have reserve and guard members in attendance today. If you would like, there's a brief meeting after the session right in the foyer outside where lunch was served. This is for all reserve and guard members who are in attendance, and the POC is Colonel Leone.
Source America and NIB are hosting an optional social here this evening from 4:30 to 6:30. It's going to be right outside the doors. These organizations have graciously extended an invitation to all of us to attend. So if you want, you're more than welcome to do that. But before reaching the social, make sure that you grab your commemorative Hap Arnold Wing pint glass. They're out there on the tables. Make sure you grab one of those from one of the Training Summit staff. Also, if you're an Air Force award winner that was planning on going to the annual awards, if you're an annual award winner, stick behind today. Just stay where you're at, and we're going to have a little session just for a few minutes. And if you were thinking about joining MCMA, they're offering $25 off membership for anybody that's attending this session. So that was a note that was passed along to me as well.
Breakfast starts tomorrow at 7. Please come early to get a plate and take a seat. We'll begin the summit at 7:45. There's a lot of important information that you'll need to hear, so please be sure to arrive early. Eat the continental breakfast rush, if you will. One last thing, if you scheduled a one-on-one with the officer assignment team, the location has been moved tomorrow from the multi-purpose room to right outside the foyer. With that, we hope you have a safe and enjoyable evening. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.
And at this time, I would like to have Mr. Robinson come on up to the stage. No, sir, I remember that you were there. Come on up, and he's going to be leading the civilians in the room reciting the oath of office.
So we're going to have all the civilians stand, and Mr. Robinson's going to lead reciting the oath of office.
Are we ready?
Ready.
I state your full name. Do solemnly swear. That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. That I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. All right, and you know what? I'll go ahead and close it out, sir. We've taken some cheap shots at you today, so.
Everybody knows me here. Enjoy your evening.